On the 17th of April 2021, in the strange and silent months of the pandemic, the funeral of Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh, was held at St. George's Chapel in Windsor Castle, and because of the restrictions of that time, only 30 people were permitted to attend. 30 mourners, out of all the people who had known the Queen's husband across his long life, were chosen to be present at his farewell. They were the closest of the family, the children and the grandchildren, the inner circle of a royal house in grief. And among those 30, seated in the near-empty chapel, was a woman who was not a blood relation of Philip and who was more than 3 decades younger than him, a woman whose presence among that tiny gathering told its own quiet story. Her name was Penny Knatchbull. For years the tabloid press had whispered about her, had circled the question of what exactly she was to the elderly prince, had hinted and insinuated and built a small industry of speculation around their closeness. She was beautiful and much younger than Philip, and she had been his constant companion for decades, and the combination was, for a certain kind of newspaper, irresistible. The whispers asked whether the friendship was something more, whether there was a secret the palace was hiding, whether the bond between the prince and the woman, so many years his junior, was what it appeared to be, or something else entirely. The real story is different, and it is, in its way, more interesting than the innuendo, because it is the story of a genuine and deep and unusual friendship, one that was rooted in shared passion and forged in shared grief, and that was known and accepted and welcomed by the royal family itself, including the Queen. There was no secret affair for the palace to hide. What the palace knew was something else, something that the whispers obscured and the headlines distorted, and the truth of it has been buried under years of speculation that missed the genuine human reality at its heart.
If you're enjoying this story so far, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. I love hearing from you.
For this is a story that begins not with romance but with the worst grief a person can know, the death of a young child, and with the kindness of an aging prince toward a mother whose life had fallen apart. It is a story of a shared love of horses, of long hours driving across country estates, of deep conversations about religion and life and loss. It is a story of a friendship that the Queen herself supported, that the family embraced, that lasted for 30 years and ended only with Philip's death. And it is a story of how that genuine friendship was sexualized and distorted by a press hungry for scandal, the real human bond obscured by the innuendo that has surrounded it. This is the real relationship between Penny Knatchbull and Prince Philip, and what the palace actually knew. To understand the friendship that would draw a duchess into the inner circle of the royal family and the heart of the Duke of Edinburgh's life, you have to begin with the woman herself, with the unlikely background of a self-made family and the marriage that carried her into the very center of the royal world. Penny Knatchbull was not born to the aristocracy, and her path into the royal circle was not the path of inherited rank, but of marriage, and the story of how she came to be there is the necessary beginning of the larger story. She was born Penelope Eastwood in 1953, into a family whose wealth was new and self-made rather than ancient and inherited. Her father was Reginald Eastwood, a man who had risen through his own efforts from humble beginnings, a butcher who had built himself into a successful businessman, the founder of a chain of steakhouses that became a familiar feature of the British High Street. The family money came from commerce, from the building of a business, from the practical and unglamorous world of trade, and Penny grew up not in the world of the aristocracy, but in the world of the self-made business family, the daughter of a man who had created his own success. This background, the self-made and commercial origins, set Penny apart from the aristocratic world she would eventually enter, the businessman's daughter who would, through marriage, find herself at the center of the royal circle. The marriage that carried Penny into the royal world was her union with Norton Knatchbull, a man whose family stood at the very heart of the extended royal family, and whose connections would bring Penny into the closest proximity to the crown. Norton Knatchbull, known then as Lord Romsey, was a member of one of the most significant families in the royal orbit, because he was the grandson of Lord Louis Mountbatten, the first Earl Mountbatten of Burma, one of the most important figures of the modern royal family. Lord Mountbatten was Prince Philip's beloved uncle, the man who had been a mentor and a father figure to Philip, who had played a central role in Philip's life and in the life of the royal family. Through his descent from Mountbatten, Norton Knatchbull was connected to the very heart of the royal world, a member of the extended royal family, and his marriage to Penny would carry her into that world, into the closest proximity to the crown and to Prince Philip himself. The connections ran even deeper because Norton Knatchbull was not merely a relation of the royal family, but a figure with close personal ties to its leading members. He was Prince Philip's godson, the godchild of the Duke of Edinburgh, a relationship that bound him personally to Philip, and he was a second cousin of Charles, the Prince of Wales, the future king, the two men connected by blood and by the close relationships of the extended royal family. When Penny married Norton, she married into this web of royal connections, becoming, through her husband, a part of the extended royal family, connected to Philip as the wife of his godson, connected to Charles as the wife of his second cousin, drawn into the closest proximity to the leading figures of the crown. The marriage was not merely a union with an aristocratic family, but an entry into the very heart of the royal world. The businessman's daughter brought, through her husband's connections, into the inner circle of the royal family. Penny married Norton at Romsey Abbey, and the closeness of the family's royal ties was evident in the role played by Charles, the Prince of Wales, who served as best man at the wedding, the future king standing up for his second cousin at his marriage. But the wedding took place under the shadow of a recent horror, because only 2 months earlier, in August 1979, Lord Mountbatten, Norton's grandfather and the patriarch of the family, had been murdered by the IRA, killed by a bomb planted on his boat in a terrorist attack that had shocked the nation and devastated the royal family. The assassination of Lord Mountbatten was a profound blow, the murder of one of the most beloved figures of the royal family, and it cast its shadow over the wedding that followed so soon after, the marriage of Penny and Norton taking place in the immediate aftermath of the family's terrible loss. The wedding was thus marked by both the closeness of the royal connections, evident in Charles's role as best man, and the grief of the recent assassination, the union of Penny and Norton occurring in the shadow of the murder that had devastated the family she was marrying into. The family that Penny married into was, then, a family at the very center of the royal world, bound to the crown by the closest ties, and her entry into it brought her into proximity with the leading figures of the royal family, including Prince Philip. As the wife of Philip's godson, as a member of the extended royal family, Penny was part of the royal circle, present at the family's gatherings, connected to its leading members, drawn into the world of the crown. She would come to know Prince Philip, not as a distant and exalted figure, but as a member of the same extended family, a relation by marriage, a man she encountered in the family circle. And it was through this proximity, this membership in the extended royal family, that the friendship between Penny and Philip would eventually develop. The connection that began with her marriage into the family deepening, in time, into the close and unusual bond that would draw her into the heart of Philip's life. In the years following her marriage, Penny took her place in the royal adjacent world, known by the titles that came with her husband's position, moving through the social world of the extended royal family. She was known, in these years, as Lady Romsey, the title she held through her marriage to Norton, and she would later be known by other titles as her husband's position changed, becoming Lady Brabourne, and eventually the Countess Mountbatten of Burma. She and Norton had children, building a family, taking their place in the world of the aristocracy and the extended royal family. Penny was, in these years, a member of the royal circle, present at its gatherings, connected to its leading figures, the businessman's daughter who had married into the heart of the royal world and taken her place within it. Her life was the life of an aristocratic wife and mother, moving through the social world of the extended royal family, connected by marriage to the crown. It is worth pausing on the unusualness of Penny's position, the self-made businessman's daughter who had married into the very heart of the royal family, because it reflects something about the openness of the royal world to those who entered it through marriage, and about the particular place that Penny would come to occupy. She had not been born to the aristocracy, had come from a world of commerce and self-made wealth rather than ancient rank, and yet through her marriage, she had been drawn into the closest proximity to the crown, accepted into the extended royal family, connected to its leading figures. This trajectory, from the self-made business family to the heart of the royal world, was an unusual one, and it placed Penny in a particular position, a member of the royal circle who had come to it from outside, a woman whose background set her apart even as her marriage drew her in. And this position, this membership in the royal world, combined with her origins outside the aristocracy, may have contributed to the particular role she would come to play, the confidant and the link to the outside world, the woman who could provide the royal family with a connection to the world beyond the palace walls. The friendship that would become the central subject of this story had not yet developed in these early years, because Penny's bond with Prince Philip would not deepen into its remarkable closeness until later, until a terrible tragedy and a shared passion brought the two of them together in a way that the ordinary connections of the extended family had not. In these early years, Penny was simply a member of the royal circle, the wife of Philip's godson, connected to the Duke of Edinburgh as a relation by marriage but not yet bound to him by the close friendship that would later develop. The remarkable bond between Penny and Philip lay in the future, awaiting the circumstances that would bring it into being, the shared grief and the shared passion that would transform an ordinary family connection into one of the closest friendships of Philip's life. The foundation had been laid, the proximity established by Penny's marriage into the family, but the friendship itself had not yet been forged. And the friendship, when it came, would be forged in the worst circumstances imaginable, in the crucible of a terrible grief, the death of a young child that would devastate Penny's life, and that would draw from Prince Philip a kindness and a support that would bind the two of them together. For the deepening of the friendship between Penny and Philip would come not in happy circumstances, but in the aftermath of tragedy, the death of Penny's young daughter that would shatter her world, and that would occasion the kindness from Philip that would forge their bond. To understand the friendship, then, we must turn to the tragedy that lay at its foundation, the loss that devastated Penny, and that drew from Philip the support that would bind them together. But before we come to that tragedy, we must understand the other figure at the center of this story, Prince Philip himself, the man whose friendship with Penny would become the subject of such speculation, the Duke of Edinburgh, whose character and whose world shaped the bond that would develop. How Prince Philip's character and his particular place within the royal family made the friendship with Penny meaningful to him, what kind of man he was, and what kind of life he led, is where the story turns next, because the friendship was a bond between two people, and to understand it we must understand them both, the woman who had married into the royal world and the prince whose companionship she would become. That prince, the man at the center of the story, is where we go now. To understand the friendship that meant so much to Prince Philip in the latter decades of his life, you have to understand the man himself, the particular character, and the particular circumstances that made a close friendship with a much younger woman so valuable to him. Philip was a complicated and a remarkable figure, and the constraints of his position and the nature of his temperament combined to create in him a need for exactly the kind of companionship that Penny would come to provide. Prince Philip, the Duke of Edinburgh, was by the 1990s a figure who had spent decades at the side of the Queen, the consort of the British monarch, the husband who walked a step behind his wife in the great public rituals of the monarchy. He had married the then Princess Elizabeth in 1947, and when she became Queen in 1952, he had taken up the strange and difficult role of the male consort, the husband of a reigning queen, a position with no clear definition and no real power, a role that required him to support his wife and to subordinate his own ambitions and his own identity to her position. For decades, Philip had occupied this role, the consort who supported the Queen, the husband who stood at her side through the great occasions of state, the figure who had given his life to the support of his wife and the institution she embodied. It was a role that demanded much and offered little in the way of personal fulfillment. The subordination was particularly difficult for a man of Philip's temperament, because he was a figure of great energy and intelligence and capability, a man who might, in other circumstances, have made his own mark on the world rather than spending his life in a supporting role. Philip was highly intelligent, possessed of a sharp and restless and inquiring mind, interested in a wide range of subjects, from science and technology to religion and philosophy, a man of genuine intellectual curiosity and capability. He was energetic and active, a man of physical vigor and practical ability, interested in engineering and design and the practical workings of things, a doer as well as a thinker. He was, by temperament, a man who might have led, who might have commanded, who might have made his own way in the world through his own abilities, and instead he had spent his life in the supporting role of the consort, subordinating his energy and his intelligence and his capability to the position behind his wife, channeling his abilities into the limited scope that his role allowed. This subordination of a capable and ambitious man to a supporting role was a source of frustration and constraint. The energy and the intelligence of Philip confined within the narrow scope of the consort's position. The constraint of his position was compounded by the famous gruffness and difficulty of Philip's exterior, the brusque and sometimes abrasive manner that was so much a part of his public image. Philip was known for his sharp tongue, his impatience, his willingness to say blunt and provocative things, his gruff and sometimes prickly manner. He could be difficult and demanding, impatient with foolishness, sharp in his judgments, brusque in his dealings. This exterior, the famous gruffness, was part of how Philip presented himself to the world, the prickly and difficult manner that made him a figure of both respect and occasional controversy. But the gruff exterior concealed, as such exteriors often do, a more complicated inner reality, a man of genuine depth and feeling and intelligence behind the brusque manner, a capacity for empathy and seriousness that the gruff exterior obscured. The difficult and prickly Philip of the public image was, in private, a more complicated and more sympathetic figure, a man of genuine depth behind the gruffness, and it was this private Philip, the man behind the brusque exterior, who would form the close friendship with Penny. There was in Philip's life a quality of loneliness that came with his position and his temperament, the isolation of a capable man confined to a supporting role, surrounded by the formality and the constraint of royal life. Philip's position as consort was, for all its proximity to the center of power, a lonely one. the role of the husband who supported the queen, but who had no real role of his own, who was surrounded by the apparatus of royal life, but who lacked, perhaps, the genuine companionship and the genuine intellectual engagement that a man of his capability craved. The formality of royal life, the constraint of his position, the subordination of his own identity to the supporting role, all contributed to a kind of isolation, the loneliness of a capable and intelligent man, confined within a role that did not fully engage or fulfill him. This loneliness, this isolation within the formality of royal life, was part of the context that made a genuine friendship so valuable to Philip, the bond with a person who could offer real companionship and real engagement, a precious thing for a man whose position was, for all its grandeur, a lonely one. The great passion of Philip's later life, the activity that gave him genuine pleasure and genuine engagement, was the sport of carriage driving, and it would become the shared world in which his friendship with Penny developed. Philip had been a keen sportsman throughout his life, an active and physical man who found in sport an outlet for his energy and his competitiveness. For many years he had played polo, the demanding equestrian sport, but as he aged and could no longer play polo at the level he wished, he took up, in the early 1970s, the sport of carriage driving, the competitive driving of horse-drawn carriages. Carriage driving became Philip's great passion, the activity into which he poured his energy and his competitiveness and his considerable practical and technical interest. He threw himself into the sport, becoming a serious and accomplished competitor, mastering the technical and the practical aspects of carriage driving, finding in it the engagement and the pleasure that his constrained royal life otherwise lacked. The sport gave Philip a genuine passion, an activity that engaged his energy and his intelligence and his competitiveness, a world in which he could pursue something for its own sake, away from the formality and the constraint of his royal duties. Carriage driving suited Philip's temperament and his abilities in a way that made it the perfect outlet for him, engaging the various aspects of his character that his royal role left unfulfilled. The sport demanded physical skill and courage, engaging Philip's energy and his physical vigor. It demanded technical knowledge and practical ability, the understanding of horses and carriages and equipment, engaging Philip's interest in the practical workings of things, his engineering and design sensibility. It demanded strategy and competitiveness, engaging Philip's sharp mind and his desire to excel and to win, and it offered the pleasure of being out in the open, driving across country estates, away from the formality and the confinement of royal life, engaging Philip's love of the outdoors and his need for freedom and engagement. The sport was, in all these ways, the perfect outlet for Philip, engaging the energy and the intelligence and the competitiveness and the love of freedom that his royal role left unfulfilled, giving him a genuine passion and a genuine pleasure in the latter decades of his life. And it was this passion, this shared world of carriage driving, that would provide the setting for his friendship with Penny, the activity that the two of them would share and that would bring them together. The role that Philip occupied within the royal family, beyond his position as consort, was that of a kind of patriarch and a figure of strength, a man on whom others relied and who took responsibility for the family and the institution. He took responsibility for the practical running of the royal estates, for the management of the family's affairs, for the organization and the discipline of the royal household. He was a figure on whom others relied, a source of strength and authority within the family, a man who took charge and provided direction. This role, the patriarch and the figure of strength, was another aspect of Philip's character, the capable and authoritative man who took responsibility and provided direction. And it would be relevant to his friendship with Penny, because it was a role in which Philip could offer support and guidance to others, could take responsibility for the welfare of those around him, could provide the strength and the direction that a person in difficulty might need. It is worth reflecting on the particular combination of qualities that made Philip the man he was, because this combination would shape the friendship with Penny and explain what each of them found in the other. Philip was intelligent and energetic and capable, a man of genuine depth and ability, confined within a supporting role. He was gruff and difficult on the surface, but more complicated and more sympathetic beneath. He was lonely, in the way that his position and his temperament made him lonely, isolated within the formality of royal life. He was passionate about carriage driving, the activity that gave him genuine engagement and pleasure. And he was a figure of strength and authority, a patriarch who took responsibility and provided direction. This combination of qualities, the intelligence and the energy and the loneliness and the passion and the strength, made Philip the particular man he was, and it created in him both a need for genuine companionship and a capacity to offer support and guidance to others. He needed the genuine engagement and companionship that a real friendship could provide, the antidote to the loneliness of his position. And he had the strength and the capability to offer support and guidance to a person in difficulty, the patriarch who could take responsibility for the welfare of others. This combination, the need and the capacity together, would shape the friendship with Penny, the bond that would provide Philip with the companionship he needed, and that would allow him to offer Penny the support she would so desperately require. The friendship between Philip and Penny would develop, then, out of the meeting of two people whose circumstances and whose needs made them suited to each other in a particular way. Philip was a lonely and capable man, confined within a supporting role, in need of genuine companionship and possessed of the strength to offer support to others. And Penny was a woman who would soon face the worst grief imaginable, who would need exactly the kind of support and guidance that Philip could offer, and who would provide, in return, the genuine companionship and engagement that Philip lacked. The meeting of these two people, the lonely and capable prince and the grieving mother, would produce a friendship that met the needs of both, the companionship that Philip craved and the support that Penny required, the bond that would develop out of the meeting of their circumstances and their needs. To understand the friendship, then, is to understand the two people who formed it, the prince whose character and circumstances we have now examined, and the woman whose terrible grief would draw from him the kindness that would forge their bond. For the friendship between Philip and Penny, as we have seen, would be forged in the crucible of a terrible tragedy, the death of Penny's young daughter, that would shatter her world and that would occasion the kindness from Philip that would bind them together. The bond would develop not in happy circumstances, but in the aftermath of the worst grief a person can know, the loss of a young child, and it was Philip's response to this grief, his kindness and his support toward a mother whose life had fallen apart, that would forge the friendship. To understand the bond between Philip and Penny, then, we must turn to the tragedy that lay at its foundation, the death of Penny's daughter that would devastate her, and that would draw from Philip the support that would bind the two of them together. That tragedy, the loss that lay at the foundation of the friendship, is where we go now, and it must be approached with the care and the gravity that such a subject demands, because it concerns the death of a child and the grief of a mother, the most painful of all human experiences, and it deserves to be treated with the seriousness and the compassion that the subject requires. How the death of Penny's young daughter devastated her life, and how Prince Philip's kindness in the aftermath of that grief forged the friendship that would become the subject of such speculation, is where the story turns next. That tragedy and that kindness the foundation of the friendship, is where we go now. The friendship between Penny Knatchbull and Prince Philip was forged in the worst circumstances a human being can face, in the aftermath of the death of a young child. And to understand the bond that developed between them, you have to understand the grief that lay at its foundation. It is a painful part of the story, the most painful of all, and it deserves to be told with the gravity and the compassion that the death of a child demands, because the friendship that would later be the subject of so much speculation grew, in its origins, out of a mother's devastation and the kindness shown to her in her darkest hour. Penny and her husband Norton had 3 children, building a family in the years after their marriage, and the youngest of these children was a daughter named Leonora, born in the summer of 1986. Leonora was the youngest of the family, a little girl who joined her older siblings in the household that Penny and Norton had made, a child like any other, loved by her parents, the youngest member of a family. Her early years were the early years of any child, the years of infancy and toddlerhood, the years in which a young child grows and develops and becomes herself, surrounded by the love of her family. Leonora was a beloved child, the youngest of Penny's 3 children, and her parents looked forward, as parents do, to watching her grow, to seeing her become herself, to the long future that lay ahead of her. That future was taken from her and from her family by a terrible illness. Leonora was diagnosed with cancer, a cancer of the kidney, the kind of devastating diagnosis that no parent can be prepared for. The discovery that their young child was gravely ill. The diagnosis of cancer in a young child is among the most terrible things a family can face. The confrontation with the possibility of losing a child to illness, the agony of watching a young child suffer through the treatment of a grave disease, the fear and the hope and the desperate struggle to save a child's life. Penny and Norton faced this terrible ordeal, the illness of their youngest child, the cancer that threatened her life, the long and frightening struggle of a family confronting the gravest illness in their youngest member. They would have done everything possible, sought every treatment, held on to every hope, fought with all the desperation of parents trying to save their child. But the illness was grave, and despite everything, the struggle was lost. Leonora died in October 1991, at the age of 5. She had been born in the summer of 1986, and she died in the autumn of 1991, a little girl of 5 years old, her life ended by the cancer that her family had fought so hard against. The death of a 5-year-old child is a tragedy of a kind that defies adequate description. The loss of a young life barely begun, the ending of a child's existence before she had the chance to grow up. The devastation of a family by the death of their youngest member. For Penny, the death of Leonora was the loss of her youngest child, the little girl she had loved and nurtured and fought to save, taken from her at the age of 5 by a terrible illness. It was the worst grief a mother can know, the death of a child, the loss that no parent should ever have to endure, the devastation that would shatter Penny's world. The grief of losing a young child is a grief beyond the ordinary measure of human sorrow, and it is important to acknowledge the depth and the devastation of what Penny experienced, the magnitude of the loss that befell her. The death of a child is widely recognized as among the most profound and the most shattering of all human griefs, a loss that overturns the natural order of things, that takes from a parent the child they were meant to protect and to raise, that leaves a wound that never fully heals. For Penny, the death of Leonora was this kind of devastating loss, the shattering of her world by the death of her youngest child, a grief of overwhelming magnitude. Her life, in the aftermath of Leonora's death, fell apart, the devastation of the loss overwhelming, the grief consuming, the world transformed by the absence of the child she had lost. This was the depth of what Penny experienced, the profound and shattering grief of a mother who had lost her young daughter, the devastation that would mark her life and that would form the foundation of the friendship that was to come. In the aftermath of this terrible loss, Penny and Norton sought to honor their daughter's memory and to bring some good out of their grief. The Leonora Children's Cancer Fund was founded in memory of the little girl who had died, a charity dedicated to the cause of children's cancer established to honor Leonora's memory and to help other children and families facing the disease that had taken her. The founding of the charity was a way of bringing some meaning and some good out of the devastating loss, of honoring Leonora's memory by working to help others, of channeling the grief into a cause that might benefit other children and families. It was a gesture of the kind that grieving parents sometimes make, the attempt to bring some good out of an unbearable loss, to honor the memory of a lost child by helping others, to find some meaning in the face of a devastating grief. The Leonora Children's Cancer Fund stood as a memorial to the little girl who had died, a way of keeping her memory alive and of bringing some good out of the family's terrible loss. It was in the aftermath of this devastating grief, in the time when Penny's life had fallen apart following the death of her daughter, that Prince Philip's friendship with her began to develop, his kindness toward a grieving mother forming the foundation of the bond that would grow between them. Philip, the figure of strength and the patriarch of the extended royal family, the man with the capacity to offer support and guidance to others, responded to Penny's grief with kindness, reaching out to a member of his extended family who was suffering the worst loss imaginable, offering support to a mother whose life had been shattered. According to those who have studied the relationship, Philip befriended Penny in this period when her life had fallen apart, offering her the kindness and the support that a person in such grief so desperately needs. The friendship began then, not in happy circumstances, but in the aftermath of tragedy. Philip's kindness toward a grieving mother, forming the foundation of the bond, the prince reaching out to support a member of his family in her darkest hour. The particular form that Philip's kindness took, the way he sought to help Penny through her grief, was to draw her into his own great passion, the sport of carriage driving, giving her something to focus on and engage with in the aftermath of her loss. Philip encouraged Penny to take up carriage driving, introducing her to the sport that was his own great passion, drawing her into the activity that he loved. This was a characteristic form of kindness, the offering of an engagement, an activity, a focus, to a person overwhelmed by grief, the giving of something to occupy the mind, and the energy in the aftermath of devastating loss. Carriage driving would give Penny something to focus on, a challenging and engaging activity that would occupy her in her grief, a new pursuit that might help her to find a way through the devastation of her loss. And it would give her, as well, the companionship of Philip, the shared activity bringing the two of them together, the sport providing both an engagement for Penny and a shared world in which the friendship could develop. Philip's encouragement of Penny to take up carriage driving was thus both a kindness, the offering of an engagement to a grieving woman, and the beginning of the shared world that would become the foundation of their friendship. There is something genuinely admirable in Philip's response to Penny's grief, in the kindness he showed to a grieving mother, and it reflects a dimension of his character that the gruff public image obscured. The famously prickly and difficult Philip, the man of the brusque exterior, showed in his response to Penny's grief a genuine capacity for empathy and kindness, a real understanding of suffering, and a real desire to help a person in pain. He reached out to a grieving mother, offered her support and engagement, drew her into an activity that might help her find a way through her grief, showed her the kindness that a person in such devastation so desperately needs. This response revealed the more complicated and more sympathetic Philip behind the gruff exterior, the man of genuine depth and feeling who could empathize with suffering and offer real kindness to a person in pain. The kindness Philip showed to Penny in her grief was a genuine and an admirable thing, a reflection of the capacity for empathy that lay behind his brusque manner, and it formed the foundation of the friendship that would grow between them. It must be emphasized, in approaching the friendship that developed from this foundation, that its origins lay in grief and kindness rather than in romance, that the bond between Penny and Philip grew, in its beginnings, out of a mother's devastation and the support shown to her in her darkest hour. The friendship that would later be the subject of so much speculation began as the kindness of a man toward a grieving member of his family, the support offered to a mother who had lost her young child, the drawing of a devastated woman into an engagement that might help her find a way through her grief. This origin, in grief and kindness, is essential to understanding the friendship, because it establishes the genuine human foundation of the bond, the real circumstances out of which it grew. The friendship was not, in its origins, a romance, but a relationship forged in the crucible of grief, the kindness of a man toward a grieving woman, the support offered in the aftermath of a devastating loss. And this foundation, in genuine grief and genuine kindness, would shape the friendship that developed, the bond rooted in the shared experience of Penny's grief and Philip's support. The relationship built on the genuine human connection that grew out of the terrible circumstances of its beginning. The friendship that grew from this foundation would develop into one of the closest and most enduring bonds of Philip's life. The relationship that began with his kindness toward a grieving mother, deepening, over the years, into a deep and constant companionship. The shared activity of carriage driving, into which Philip had drawn Penny, would become the world in which the friendship developed, the two of them sharing the sport, driving together, competing together, the activity providing both an engagement for Penny and a shared world in which their bond could grow, and the friendship would deepen beyond the shared activity into a genuine companionship, a closeness and a mutual understanding that would make Penny one of the most important people in Philip's life. The bond that began in grief and kindness would grow into a deep and enduring friendship, the relationship that would last for the rest of Philip's life, and that would become the subject of so much speculation and so much misunderstanding. How the friendship developed from its foundation in grief and kindness, how the shared world of carriage driving became the setting for a deepening bond, and how the relationship between Penny and Philip grew into one of the closest companionships of his life, is where the story turns next. Because the friendship, forged in the crucible of grief, would develop into something deep and lasting, and it is to that development, the growth of the bond through the shared world of carriage driving, that we now turn. That development, the deepening of the friendship, is where we go now. The friendship that had been forged in the crucible of grief developed, in the years that followed, into a deep and enduring bond, and the world in which it grew was the world of carriage driving, the shared passion that Philip had drawn Penny into, and that became the setting for their deepening companionship. The sport gave the friendship its substance and its setting, the shared activity around which the bond developed, and it was in the long hours of driving together across country estates that the friendship between Penny and Philip grew into one of the closest of his life. Philip began teaching Penny carriage driving in earnest in the years following Leonora's death, taking on the role of her instructor and her mentor in the sport that was his own great passion. The teaching began, according to those who have studied the relationship, around the mid-1990s, in the period when Penny was finding her way through the grief of her daughter's death, and when Philip's kindness was drawing her into the engagement that might help her. Philip taught Penny the sport, instructing her in the skills and the techniques of carriage driving, sharing with her his own considerable expertise and experience, becoming her mentor in the demanding and engaging activity. The teaching was itself a form of the kindness Philip had shown, the giving of his time and his expertise to a grieving woman, the sharing of his passion as a way of helping her find a way through her loss. And it established between them the relationship of teacher and pupil, mentor and student, the bond that would develop as Philip shared his knowledge and his passion with Penny, and as she learned the sport under his guidance. The teaching of carriage driving was the beginning of a shared activity that would become the foundation of the friendship, the two of them bonded by the sport they came to share. As Penny learned the sport under Philip's instruction, the two of them began to share the activity, driving together, practicing together, pursuing the sport that they now had in common. The shared activity bonded them, the common pursuit of carriage driving, providing a basis for the friendship. The two of them brought together by the sport they both engaged in. They became, in time, carriage driving partners, the two of them sharing the activity, driving together across the country estates, pursuing the sport as a shared passion. The shared activity of carriage driving was thus the foundation of the friendship, the common pursuit that bonded them, the basis on which their companionship developed. The sport itself, the activity that Penny and Philip shared, was a demanding and an engaging one. the competitive driving of horse-drawn carriages, and it provided a rich and absorbing world for the two of them to share. Carriage driving involved the driving of carriages drawn by teams of horses, a sport that demanded skill and courage and technical knowledge. The mastery of the horses and the carriage and the techniques of driving. It was a competitive sport, with events and competitions in which drivers tested their skill against one another, and Philip was a serious and accomplished competitor, pursuing the sport with the competitiveness and the dedication that he brought to all his pursuits. The sport involved long hours of practice and preparation, the training of the horses, the maintenance of the carriages and the equipment, the development of the skills and the techniques required for competition. It was, in all these ways, a rich and absorbing activity, a sport that demanded engagement and dedication, and that provided a full and engaging world for those who pursued it. And it was this world, the rich and absorbing world of carriage driving, that Penny and Philip came to share, the sport providing the setting and the substance of their friendship. The shared world of carriage driving brought Penny and Philip together in the long hours of practice and competition and travel, the time spent together in the pursuit of the sport, providing the occasion for their friendship to deepen. The sport required them to spend time together in the practice and the preparation and the competition, in the travel to events and the long hours of driving. And this time together was the occasion for their bond to grow. They drove together across the country estates, the long hours of driving providing time for conversation and companionship. They traveled together to competitions, the shared pursuit of the sport bringing them together at events. They spent time together in the world of carriage driving, the practice and the preparation and the competition, providing the occasions for their friendship to deepen. The shared world of the sport thus brought Penny and Philip together, the time spent in its pursuit providing the occasion for their bond to grow, the friendship deepening in the long hours of driving and competition and travel. The setting of the friendship, the country estates across which Penny and Philip drove, provided a world apart from the formality and the constraint of royal life, a setting in which the two of them could enjoy a freedom and an ease that the formal world of the court did not allow. The carriage driving took place on the great country estates, the sprawling grounds of the royal and aristocratic properties, away from the formality and the public scrutiny of royal life. In this setting, driving across the open country, Penny and Philip could enjoy a freedom and an ease, a relief from the formality and the constraint that surrounded Philip in his royal role. The country setting, the open estates, the activity of driving, provided a world apart, a place where Philip could escape the confinement of his position and enjoy the genuine pleasure of the sport and the companionship of his friend. This setting, the country estates and the open country, was part of what made the friendship valuable to Philip, the world apart from the formality of royal life in which he could enjoy the freedom and the ease that his position otherwise denied him. The long hours of driving together provided the occasion not only for the shared pursuit of the sport, but for genuine conversation and companionship, the two of them talking as they drove across the country estates. As they drove together, Penny and Philip talked, the long hours of driving providing time for conversation, the shared activity giving way to genuine companionship and exchange. They talked, according to those who have described the friendship, of deep and serious matters, of religion and philosophy, and the larger questions of life. Philip's serious and inquiring mind engaging with the deep subjects that interested him. The conversations ranged over the serious matters that engaged Philip's intellect, religion, and worldly matters, and the deep questions that occupied his restless and inquiring mind. And these conversations, the genuine exchange of two people talking seriously of deep matters, were part of what made the friendship valuable, the companionship of genuine conversation, the meeting of minds in the long hours of driving. The friendship was thus not merely a shared activity, but a genuine companionship, the two of them talking seriously of deep matters as they drove, the bond deepening through the genuine exchange of conversation and ideas. The genuine companionship of the friendship, the meeting of two people who could talk seriously and share a passion, met needs in both of them, providing each with something valuable that their lives otherwise lacked. For Philip, The friendship provided the genuine companionship and engagement that his constrained and lonely royal position lacked, the company of a person with whom he could share his passion and his serious conversation, the antidote to the isolation of his role. For Penny, the friendship provided the support and the engagement and the companionship that helped her through her grief and that enriched her life, the guidance of a mentor in the sport, the company of a friend who valued her, the genuine bond that gave her something to focus on and to value in the aftermath of her loss. The friendship met needs in both of them, providing each with the genuine companionship and engagement that their lives otherwise lacked. The bond valuable to both the lonely prince and the grieving mother. And this mutual value, the meeting of needs in both of them, was part of what made the friendship endure, the bond providing each with something genuinely valuable, the companionship that enriched both their lives. It is important to emphasize, in describing the development of the friendship, that its substance was the shared passion for carriage driving and the genuine companionship of conversation and exchange, that the bond was rooted in these genuine shared interests rather than in romance. The friendship between Penny and Philip was a friendship of shared passion and genuine companionship. The two of them bonded by their common pursuit of carriage driving and by the genuine exchange of their conversation. The substance of the bond was the sport they shared and the conversation they exchanged, the genuine interests and the genuine companionship that brought them together and that sustained their friendship. This substance, the shared passion and the genuine companionship, is essential to understanding the friendship because it establishes the real basis of the bond, the genuine shared interests on which it rested. The friendship was not a romance dressed up as a shared activity, but a genuine friendship rooted in genuine shared interests. The two of them bonded by their common passion for carriage driving and by the genuine companionship of their conversation and exchange. And this genuine basis, the shared passion and the real companionship, was the foundation of a bond that would endure for decades, the friendship rooted in genuine shared interests that would last for the rest of Philip's life. The depth and the endurance of the friendship would grow from this foundation, the bond that had developed through the shared world of carriage driving deepening, over the years, into one of the closest and most constant relationships of Philip's life. The friendship that had begun in grief and kindness and developed through the shared passion for carriage driving would grow, over the decades, into a deep and enduring bond, Penny becoming one of the most important and most constant figures in Philip's life. The bond would deepen beyond the shared activity into a profound companionship, a closeness, and a mutual reliance that would make Penny a central figure in Philip's world, the friend and the confidant and the constant companion of his later decades. How deep the friendship became, how central Penny became to Philip's life, and what the bond meant to both of them in the years of its maturity, is where the story turns next. Because the friendship, having developed through the shared world of carriage driving, would grow into a deep and enduring bond, and it is to that depth, the maturity of the friendship, that depth, the maturity of the bond, is where we go now. The friendship that had developed through the shared world of carriage driving grew, over the decades, into one of the deepest and most constant relationships of Prince Philip's life, a bond of genuine closeness and mutual reliance that made Penny one of the most important figures in his world. The depth of the friendship, the closeness, and the constancy that it achieved is one of the central truths of the story, and it reveals the genuine and significant place that the bond came to occupy in Philip's life. The friendship became, over the years, a relationship of deep closeness and genuine confidence, Penny becoming a trusted confidant to whom Philip could speak freely and openly. She became, according to those who have described the relationship, one of the people Philip trusted most, a confidant to whom he could speak openly, a person with whom he could share his thoughts and his concerns. The role of confidant was a significant one, because it meant that Penny occupied a place of genuine trust and intimacy in Philip's life, a person to whom he could speak freely, with whom he could be open and unguarded, in whom he could confide. For a man in Philip's position, surrounded by the formality and the constraint of royal life, The existence of such a confidant was a valuable thing, a person with whom he could be genuinely open, to whom he could speak freely, in a way that the formality of his role otherwise made difficult. Penny's role as confidant reflected the depth of the friendship, the genuine trust and intimacy that the bond had achieved, the place of genuine confidence that she occupied in Philip's life. The descriptions of Penny as a keeper of Philip's secrets capture the depth of the trust between them, the genuine confidence that she occupied in his life. She has been described, by those who have studied the relationship, as a keeper of Philip's secrets, a person who held his confidences, who was trusted with the private thoughts and concerns that he shared with few others. This description, the keeper of secrets, captures the depth of the trust between Penny and Philip, the genuine confidence that she held, the place of intimacy that she occupied in his life. To be the keeper of a person's secrets is to hold a place of deep trust, to be entrusted with the private matters that are shared with few others, and Penny's role as the keeper of Philip's secrets reflects the depth of the trust between them, the genuine confidence and intimacy that the friendship had achieved. The friendship was thus not a superficial acquaintance but a relationship of deep trust and confidence, Penny holding the place of a genuine confidant and the keeper of Philip's secrets, a person entrusted with his private thoughts and concerns. The constancy of Penny's presence in Philip's life, her regular and frequent companionship, reflects the central place that she came to occupy in his world. She became a constant presence in Philip's life, a regular and frequent companion, a person who was often with him, whose company he sought and valued. There is a detail, often repeated in descriptions of the friendship, that Philip would insist on Penny's presence at functions and gatherings, that he would call her by an affectionate nickname that signified his insistence on her attendance, the name reflecting his desire to have her included, to have her present, to have her company. This insistence on Penny's presence, this desire to have her included and attending, reflects the central place that she occupied in Philip's life, the importance of her company to him, the constancy of her presence in his world. Penny was not an occasional acquaintance, but a constant companion, a regular and frequent presence in Philip's life, a person whose company he sought and valued and insisted upon, the friend who occupied a central place in his world. In Philip's later years, after his retirement from public duties, Penny became a regular visitor to the place where he spent much of his time, the constancy of her companionship continuing into the final phase of his life. After Philip retired from public life in 2017, he spent much of his time at a cottage on the Sandringham estate, a place of retreat and quiet, where he passed his later years away from the public eye. And Penny was a regular visitor to this place, continuing her companionship with Philip into the years of his retirement, remaining a constant presence in his life, even as he withdrew from public duties. The continuation of the friendship into Philip's retirement, Penny's regular visits to the cottage where he spent his later years, reflects the constancy and the endurance of the bond, the friendship lasting into the final phase of Philip's life, Penny remaining a constant companion, even as Philip withdrew from the world. The friendship was thus an enduring one, lasting through the decades and into Philip's retirement, Penny remaining a constant presence in his life to the end. The friendship was not only a matter of companionship, but also of practical support, Philip helping Penny through difficulties in her life, and Penny providing Philip with a genuine connection and engagement. The relationship involved genuine mutual support, the two of them helping each other in practical and emotional ways. Philip, the figure of strength and capability, provided Penny with support and guidance, helping her through difficulties, offering the strength and the direction that his capable and authoritative character could provide. There is an account that Philip helped Penny with the management of her family estate during a period when her marriage was troubled, the prince providing practical support and guidance in a difficult time. This practical support, the help Philip provided to Penny in the management of her affairs and the navigation of her difficulties, reflects the genuine and substantial nature of the friendship, the bond involving real mutual support rather than mere social companionship. And Penny, in turn, provided Philip with genuine connection and engagement, the company of a person who valued him, the companionship that enriched his constrained and lonely life. The friendship was thus a relationship of genuine mutual support, the two of them helping each other, the bond involving real and substantial assistance, rather than mere social acquaintance. The value of the friendship to Philip lay in the genuine companionship and the genuine connection that it provided, the relief from the isolation of his position, and the engagement that his constrained life otherwise lacked. For Philip, the friendship with Penny was a source of genuine value, providing the companionship and the connection and the engagement that his royal position otherwise denied him. The bond gave him a person with whom he could be genuinely open, a confidant to whom he could speak freely, a companion with whom he could share his passion and his conversation. It gave him a connection to a person who valued him for himself, a genuine relationship that was not constrained by the formality of his role. The friendship was thus genuinely valuable to Philip, a source of companionship and connection and engagement that his constrained and lonely royal life otherwise lacked, the bond providing him with something genuinely precious in the latter decades of his life. The value of the friendship to Penny lay in the support and the companionship and the engagement that it provided, the help through her grief and the enrichment of her life. For Penny, the friendship with Philip was equally valuable, providing the support and the guidance and the companionship that helped her through the difficulties of her life and that enriched her existence. The bond gave her a mentor in the sport of carriage driving, a guide and a teacher in the activity that she came to share with Philip. It gave her support and guidance through her grief and through the difficulties of her life, the strength and the direction that Philip's capable character could provide. And it gave her the companionship of a genuine friend, a person who valued her, a relationship that enriched her life, and that provided her with genuine connection and engagement. The friendship was thus genuinely valuable to Penny, a source of support and companionship and engagement that helped her through her grief and enriched her life, the bond providing her with something genuinely precious in the years following her terrible loss. The mutual value of the friendship, the genuine benefit that each derived from it, reflects the genuine and significant nature of the bond, the relationship meeting real needs in both of them and providing each with something genuinely precious. The friendship between Penny and Philip was not a superficial acquaintance or a mere social connection, but a genuine and significant bond, a relationship of deep closeness and mutual reliance that provided each of them with something valuable that their lives otherwise lacked. For Philip, it provided the companionship and the connection and the engagement that his constrained and lonely position denied him. For Penny, it provided the support and the companionship and the engagement that helped her through her grief and enriched her life. The mutual value of the friendship, the genuine benefit to both, reflects the genuine and significant nature of the bond, the relationship that met real needs in both of them, and that provided each with something genuinely precious, the friendship that occupied a central and valuable place in both their lives. The depth and the constancy and the mutual value of the friendship, then, made it one of the most significant relationships in Prince Philip's life, a genuine and deep bond that occupied a central place in his world. Penny became, over the decades, one of the most important figures in Philip's life, a trusted confidant and a constant companion, a person of genuine significance in his world. The friendship that had begun in grief and kindness and developed through the shared passion for carriage driving had grown into a deep and enduring and genuinely significant bond, one of the closest relationships of Philip's life, a friendship of real depth and real importance. And this depth and this significance, the genuine and central place that the friendship occupied in Philip's life, is one of the central truths of the story. The bond between Penny and Philip, a genuine and significant relationship, rather than the superficial or the scandalous thing that the speculation has sometimes suggested. This genuine and significant friendship was known to and accepted by the royal family, including the Queen, and the family's knowledge and acceptance of the bond is one of the most important truths of the story, the truth that inverts the implied scandal of the speculation. For the friendship between Penny and Philip was not a secret hidden from the royal family, but a relationship known to and accepted by them, a bond that the Queen herself supported and welcomed. How the royal family, and the Queen in particular, knew of and accepted the friendship, what the family's knowledge and acceptance of the bond reveals about its genuine and legitimate nature, and how this knowledge and acceptance inverts the implied scandal of the speculation, is where the story turns next. Because the question of what the palace knew is central to the story, and the answer, the family's knowledge and acceptance of a genuine friendship, inverts the implied scandal and reveals the genuine and legitimate nature of the bond. That knowledge and that acceptance, what the palace actually knew, is where we go now. The question embedded in the title of this story, the question of what the palace knew, points toward an implied scandal, the suggestion that the royal family was aware of some hidden truth about the relationship between Penny and Philip, some secret that they concealed. And the answer to that question is the most important truth of the whole story. Because what the palace knew was not a scandal to be hidden, but a genuine friendship to be welcomed, and the family's knowledge and acceptance of the bond inverts the implied scandal entirely, revealing the genuine and legitimate nature of the relationship. The central fact, the fact that inverts the implied scandal, is that the friendship between Penny and Philip was known to the royal family and accepted by them, including by the Queen herself. The relationship was not a secret hidden from the family, not a clandestine bond conducted in concealment, but an open and accepted friendship that the royal family knew of and welcomed. The Queen knew of the friendship between her husband and Penny, was aware of the bond, understood its nature, and accepted it. The family knew of the relationship, were aware of Penny's place in Philip's life, understood the friendship for what it was, and welcomed it. The friendship was thus an open and accepted thing, known to the royal family and welcomed by them, rather than the secret scandal that the implied question suggests. And this fact, the family's knowledge and acceptance of the friendship, is the most important truth of the story, the truth that inverts the implied scandal and reveals the genuine and legitimate nature of the bond. The Queen's own relationship with Penny is one of the clearest indications of the family's acceptance of the friendship, because the Queen was herself close to Penny, valuing her and welcoming her presence. Penny was close not only to Philip, but to the Queen as well, the two women having their own genuine relationship, the Queen valuing Penny and welcoming her company. The Queen and Penny were friends in their own right, the relationship not merely a matter of Penny's bond with Philip, but a genuine connection between Penny and the Queen as well. The Queen valued Penny's company, welcomed her presence, maintained her own relationship with her, and this relationship between the Queen and Penny continued even after Philip's death, the two women maintaining their connection, the Queen continuing to value Penny's company, even after the friend they had both known was gone. The Queen's own relationship with Penny, the genuine connection between the two women, is one of the clearest indications of the family's acceptance of the friendship, the Queen valuing and welcoming Penny in her own right, the bond between Penny and the royal family, extending to the Queen herself. The role that Penny came to play within the royal circle, as a link to the world beyond the palace walls, reflects the genuine value that the family placed on her and the genuine acceptance she enjoyed. Penny came to occupy a particular role within the royal world, serving as a kind of connection to the outside world, a person who could provide the royal family with a link to the world beyond the formality and the isolation of the court. She has been described as a touchstone of royal life, a person who provided the royals with a connection to the outside world, who could tell them about what was happening beyond the palace walls, who served as a link between the isolated world of the court and the world outside. This role, the touchstone and the link to the outside world, reflects the genuine value that the family placed on Penny, the genuine acceptance she enjoyed, the particular place she occupied in the royal world. She was not merely tolerated but valued, not merely accepted but relied upon, occupying a genuine and valued role as a connection between the royal family and the world beyond. And this role, the valued link to the outside world, reflects the genuine acceptance and the genuine value that Penny enjoyed within the royal family, the place of a trusted and valued figure rather than a tolerated or concealed one.
If you're hooked on this story, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Your support means everything and helps me bring you more emotional stories like this one.
The acceptance of Penny by the wider royal family, beyond Philip and the Queen, is evident in the genuine relationships she enjoyed with other members of the family, including the future king. Penny was close not only to Philip and the Queen, but to other members of the royal family as well, enjoying genuine relationships with the wider family. She was a friend to Charles, the Prince of Wales, and future king, the relationship between them a genuine one, and the closeness of the family to Penny was evident in significant gestures, such as the role that Charles played at the wedding of Penny's daughter, giving the bride away, standing in a place of honor at the marriage of Penny's child. This gesture, Charles giving away Penny's daughter at her wedding, reflects the genuine closeness of the royal family to Penny, the place of a valued and accepted figure that she occupied, the genuine relationships she enjoyed with the wider family. The acceptance of Penny extended beyond Philip and the Queen to the wider royal family, the genuine relationships she enjoyed, and the significant gestures of closeness, reflecting the genuine place she occupied in the royal world. The most significant indication of Penny's acceptance and her genuine place in the royal family was her presence among the small group of mourners at Philip's funeral, the inclusion of Penny among the handful of the closest, reflecting the family's acknowledgement of her place. When Philip died and his funeral was held under the restrictions of the pandemic, with only a small number of mourners permitted to attend, Penny was among that small group, included among the handful of the closest who were present at Philip's farewell. The inclusion of Penny among the small group of mourners, at a funeral limited to only the closest of the family and friends, was a significant acknowledgement of her place, a recognition by the family of the genuine and central place she occupied in Philip's life. To be included among such a small group at a funeral so restricted was to be acknowledged as one of the closest to Philip, one of the most important figures in his life, a person whose place in his world the family recognized and honored. The inclusion of Penny among the mourners at Philip's funeral was thus the most significant indication of her acceptance and her genuine place, the family's acknowledgement of the central place she occupied in Philip's life, the recognition of the genuine and significant nature of the friendship. The significance of this inclusion, in the context of the restricted funeral, cannot be overstated, because it represents the family's clear and public acknowledgement of the legitimacy and the importance of the friendship. The funeral was limited to only 30 mourners, a tiny group consisting of the closest of the family and the most important figures in Philip's life. For Penny to be included among this group was for the family to acknowledge, clearly and publicly, that she was one of the most important people in Philip's life, that her place in his world was genuine and significant, that the friendship was a legitimate and important bond. The inclusion was a clear statement of the family's recognition of the friendship, a public acknowledgement of Penny's place, a demonstration that the bond was accepted and honored by the family. And this clear and public acknowledgement, in the context of the restricted funeral, represents the family's recognition of the legitimacy and the importance of the friendship, the inclusion of Penny among the closest mourners, a demonstration that the bond was genuine and accepted and honored, rather than the secret scandal that the speculation has suggested. The inversion of the implied scandal, then, is complete, because the question of what the palace knew is answered not by the revelation of a hidden scandal, but by the demonstration of a genuine and accepted friendship. The implied scandal of the title, the suggestion that the palace knew some hidden truth about the relationship, is inverted by the reality, which is that the palace knew the friendship for what it was, a genuine and legitimate bond, and accepted and welcomed it. What the palace knew was not a scandal to be concealed, but a friendship to be welcomed, not a hidden truth to be hidden, but an open and accepted relationship. The Queen knew of the friendship and valued Penny in her own right. The family knew of the bond and accepted it, welcoming Penny and relying on her as a link to the outside world. And the family acknowledged the friendship clearly and publicly, including Penny among the closest mourners at Philip's funeral. The inversion of the implied scandal is thus complete. The question of what the palace knew, answered not by a hidden scandal, but by a genuine and accepted friendship, the palace knowing the bond for what it was, and welcoming it, rather than concealing some secret truth. This inversion reveals the genuine and legitimate nature of the friendship, the bond between Penny and Philip, a genuine and accepted relationship, rather than the secret scandal that the speculation has suggested. The friendship was not a clandestine affair, conducted in concealment, not a secret that the palace hid, but an open and accepted bond that the royal family knew of and welcomed. It was a genuine friendship, rooted in shared passion and forged in shared grief, a relationship of deep companionship and mutual support, and it was known to and accepted by the royal family, including the Queen. The genuine and legitimate nature of the friendship, revealed by the family's knowledge and acceptance of it, is the central truth that the inversion of the implied scandal makes clear. The bond between Penny and Philip, a genuine and accepted relationship, rather than the secret scandal that the speculation has suggested. And yet, despite the genuine and legitimate nature of the friendship, despite the family's knowledge and acceptance of it, the relationship has been the subject of persistent speculation and innuendo, the tabloid press building a small industry of insinuation around the bond. The friendship that was known to and accepted by the royal family, the genuine and legitimate relationship rooted in shared passion and forged in shared grief, has nonetheless been the subject of speculation about whether it was something more. The tabloid press, circling the question of the relationship's nature, building insinuation around the closeness between Penny and Philip. How the tabloid speculation about the friendship arose and persisted, why such a genuine friendship attracted such innuendo, and how the speculation distorted the genuine human reality of the bond, is where the story turns next. Because the friendship, genuine and accepted as it was, has been the subject of persistent speculation, and it is to that speculation and its emptiness that we now turn. That speculation, and the honest truth that answers it, is where we go now. Despite the genuine and accepted nature of the friendship, despite the family's knowledge and welcome of the bond, the relationship between Penny and Philip became the subject of persistent tabloid speculation, a small industry of insinuation that circled the question of whether the friendship was something more than it appeared. This speculation, the innuendo that has surrounded the relationship, deserves to be confronted honestly, both to recognize it for what it is and to set against it the documented reality that answers it, because the speculation has distorted a genuine human bond and has done a disservice to the people involved. The speculation about the friendship took the form of innuendo and insinuation, the suggestion that the bond between Penny and Philip was romantic, that the closeness between the prince and the much younger woman was something more than friendship. The tabloid press, ever hungry for royal scandal, circled the relationship, building insinuation around the closeness between Penny and Philip, suggesting through hint and innuendo that the friendship might be a romance, that the bond might be an affair. The speculation rarely took the form of direct assertion, because there was no evidence to support a direct assertion, but rather the form of insinuation and innuendo, the suggestion through hint and implication that the friendship might be something more. This insinuation, the innuendo that surrounded the relationship, built a small industry of speculation around the bond. The tabloid press, circling the question of the relationship's nature, suggesting through hint and implication that the friendship might be a romance. It is essential to be clear and direct about the status of this speculation, which is that it has never been substantiated, that the innuendo rests on no evidence, that the suggestion of a romance has never been proven or established. The speculation about the friendship is just that, speculation, the innuendo resting on no evidence, the suggestion of a romance never substantiated or proven. There is no evidence that the friendship was anything other than what it appeared to be, a genuine bond of companionship and shared passion. There is no proof of a romance, no substantiation of the innuendo, no evidence to support the suggestion that the bond was anything more than friendship. The speculation rests entirely on insinuation and innuendo, on the suggestion of a romance that has never been proven, on the circling of the question without any evidence to answer it. And this status, the unsubstantiated and unproven nature of the speculation, is essential to recognize, because it distinguishes the innuendo from established fact, the speculation from the documented reality, the suggestion of a romance from any proven truth. The documented reality, set against the unsubstantiated speculation, is the genuine friendship that we have examined, the bond rooted in shared passion and forged in shared grief, known to and accepted by the royal family. The documented reality of the relationship is the friendship, the genuine bond of companionship and shared passion that developed out of grief and kindness, and that was accepted by the royal family. This documented reality, the genuine friendship, is what the evidence supports, what the people involved and those close to them have described, what the family's knowledge and acceptance of the bond reflects. The documented reality is a friendship, not a romance, a genuine bond of companionship, rather than the affair that the innuendo has suggested. And this documented reality, set against the unsubstantiated speculation, is what should be recognized as the truth of the relationship, the genuine friendship that the evidence supports, rather than the unproven romance that the innuendo has suggested. The question of why such a genuine friendship attracted such persistent innuendo is worth considering, because the answer reveals something about the dynamics of speculation and the appetite for scandal. The friendship between Penny and Philip attracted innuendo for several reasons, none of which had anything to do with any evidence of a romance. There was the age difference between them, the fact that Penny was many years younger than Philip, the more than 3 decades that separated them in age. There was the closeness of the friendship, the genuine intimacy and constancy of the bond, the depth of the companionship between them. There was the appetite for royal scandal, the hunger of the tabloid press, and the public for stories of royal impropriety, the readiness to see scandal in royal relationships. And there was, perhaps, a difficulty in accepting that a close and intimate friendship between a man and a younger woman could be simply a friendship, the assumption that such closeness must be romantic, the reluctance to accept a genuine friendship for what it is. These factors, the age difference and the closeness, and the appetite for scandal, and the assumption that intimacy must be romantic, combined to attract innuendo to the friendship, the speculation arising not from any evidence of a romance, but from these dynamics of assumption and appetite. The dynamics that attracted innuendo to the friendship reveal a particular difficulty in the way close friendships between men and women are perceived, the assumption that such friendships must be romantic, the reluctance to accept them as genuine friendships. There is a tendency, in the perception of close friendships between men and women, to assume that the closeness must be romantic, that a genuine intimacy between a man and a woman must be more than friendship, that such bonds cannot simply be friendships. This assumption, the reluctance to accept close friendships between men and women as genuine friendships, contributed to the innuendo that surrounded the bond between Penny and Philip, the speculation arising in part from the assumption that their closeness must be romantic. And this assumption, This difficulty in accepting close friendships between men and women is itself a distortion, a failure to recognize that genuine and deep friendships between men and women are possible, that closeness and intimacy need not be romantic, that a bond can be a friendship rather than a romance. The innuendo that surrounded the friendship between Penny and Philip reflected this distortion, the assumption that their closeness must be romantic, the reluctance to accept their bond as the genuine friendship it was. The unfairness of the speculation, the disservice it did to the people involved, is considerable, because it sexualized a genuine friendship and a grieving mother's bond with a kind older man, distorting the genuine human reality of the relationship. The innuendo that surrounded the friendship sexualized a bond that had grown out of grief and kindness, distorting the genuine human reality of the relationship, doing a disservice to the people involved. It took a friendship that had begun with the kindness of a man toward a grieving mother, a bond rooted in shared passion and genuine companionship, and it cast over it the suggestion of a romance, sexualizing a relationship that was, by all the evidence, a genuine friendship. This sexualizing of the friendship was unfair to the people involved, distorting the genuine nature of the bond, casting a salacious shadow over a relationship that had grown out of grief and kindness. It was unfair to Penny, sexualizing her bond with Philip, distorting the genuine friendship that had helped her through her grief. It was unfair to Philip, sexualizing his kindness toward a grieving mother, distorting the genuine friendship that had enriched his life. And it was unfair to the memory of the friendship itself, casting a salacious shadow over a genuine bond, distorting the genuine human reality of the relationship. The particular unfairness of sexualizing a bond that had grown out of a mother's grief deserves emphasis, because it represents a distortion of one of the most genuine and admirable aspects of the friendship. The friendship between Penny and Philip had grown, as we have seen, out of the kindness of a man toward a grieving mother, the support offered to a woman whose young daughter had died. To sexualize this bond, to suggest that it was a romance, is to distort one of the most genuine and admirable aspects of the relationship, the kindness shown to a grieving mother and the genuine friendship that grew from it. The sexualizing of the bond takes a relationship that began with compassion and kindness, that grew out of the support offered to a woman in the worst grief imaginable, and it casts over it the suggestion of a romance, distorting the genuine compassion and kindness at its foundation. This is a particular unfairness, the sexualizing of a bond that had grown out of grief and kindness, the distortion of one of the most genuine and admirable aspects of the friendship, the casting of a salacious shadow over a relationship founded on compassion and support. It is worth being clear in confronting the speculation that to reject the innuendo is not to make any claim beyond what the evidence supports, but simply to recognize the documented reality and to set it against the unsubstantiated speculation. To reject the innuendo about the friendship is not to assert anything beyond the evidence, not to make any claim that cannot be supported, but simply to recognize the documented reality of the genuine friendship and to set it against the unsubstantiated speculation of a romance. The documented reality is a friendship, and the speculation of a romance is unsubstantiated. And to recognize this is not to make any claim beyond the evidence, but simply to distinguish the documented from the speculative, the genuine friendship from the unproven innuendo. The honest course is to recognize the genuine friendship that the evidence supports, and to set against it the unsubstantiated speculation that the innuendo has suggested, distinguishing the documented reality from the unproven insinuation, the genuine bond from the salacious suggestion. This is not to make any claim beyond the evidence, but simply to recognize the truth of the relationship, the genuine friendship that the evidence supports, rather than the unproven romance that the innuendo has suggested. The defense of the friendship against the innuendo was made, fittingly, by those who understood its genuine nature, including the actor who portrayed Philip in a dramatization of the relationship and who recognized the friendship for what it was. When the friendship was dramatized and the speculation revived, the actor who portrayed Philip defended the genuine nature of the bond, recognizing it as a real and strong friendship, and noting that those who focused only on the salacious headlines would miss the genuine human reality of the relationship. This defense, the recognition of the friendship as a genuine and strong bond, and the observation that the salacious headlines missed the picture, captured the truth of the relationship, the genuine friendship that the innuendo distorted. The defense recognized that the friendship told something admirable about Philip, about his capacity for empathy with a person who had suffered a terrible loss, and that the salacious focus on the relationship missed this genuine human reality. And this defense, made by one who had studied the relationship in order to portray it, captured the truth of the bond, the genuine friendship that the innuendo distorted, the real human reality that the salacious headlines obscured. The speculation about the friendship, then, was an unsubstantiated innuendo that distorted a genuine human bond, sexualizing a friendship that had grown out of grief and kindness, and that was known to and accepted by the royal family. The innuendo rested on no evidence, the suggestion of a romance never substantiated or proven, the speculation arising not from any evidence but from the dynamics of assumption and appetite, the age difference and the closeness and the hunger for scandal and the reluctance to accept a genuine friendship for what it was. And the speculation distorted the genuine human reality of the relationship, sexualizing a bond that had grown out of compassion and kindness, casting a salacious shadow over a genuine friendship, doing a disservice to the people involved and to the memory of the bond. The honest truth, set against the speculation, is the genuine friendship that the evidence supports. The bond rooted in shared passion and forged in shared grief, known to and accepted by the royal family. A relationship distorted by innuendo, but genuine and admirable in its reality. The distortion of the friendship by speculation was compounded by its dramatization, the portrayal of the relationship in a popular drama, bringing the speculation to a wide audience and further shaping public perception of the bond. The friendship between Penny and Philip was dramatized in a popular television series, the portrayal of the relationship reaching a wide audience and further shaping the public perception of the bond, often at the expense of the documented reality. How the dramatization of the friendship shaped public perception, how the portrayal of the relationship in popular drama affected the understanding of the bond, and how the dramatized version, compared to the documented reality, is where the story turns next. Because the friendship was not only the subject of tabloid speculation, but also of popular dramatization, and it is to that dramatization and its effect on the understanding of the bond that we now turn. That dramatization and its distance from the documented truth is where we go now. The distortion of the friendship by tabloid speculation was compounded, in recent years, by its dramatization in a popular television series, the portrayal of the relationship reaching a vast audience and shaping the public perception of the bond in ways that often departed from the documented reality. The dramatization brought the friendship to wider attention than it had ever received, but it also introduced its own distortions, the demands of drama, and the appetite for intrigue, shaping a portrayal that did not always reflect the genuine nature of the relationship. The friendship between Penny and Philip was dramatized in a popular and widely watched television series about the royal family, a drama that told the story of the reign of the Queen and the lives of the royals across the decades. In one of its later seasons, this series turned its attention to the friendship between Philip and Penny, portraying the relationship, dramatizing the bond between the prince and the much younger woman, bringing the friendship to the attention of the vast audience that the series commanded. The dramatization gave the friendship a prominence it had never had before, portraying the relationship for a global audience, making the bond between Penny and Philip a subject of widespread attention and discussion. The series was enormously popular and influential, watched by millions around the world, and its portrayal of the friendship reached a vast audience, shaping the public perception of the relationship for the many who watched it. The dramatization framed the friendship in terms of its appearance and its optics, focusing on how the relationship between Philip and a much younger woman appeared, the questions and the speculation that the closeness might raise. The series explored the friendship in terms of its optics, the way the relationship appeared, the speculation that the closeness between Philip and a younger woman might invite. The dramatization engaged with the very speculation that had surrounded the relationship, exploring the questions about the nature of the bond, the appearance of the friendship, the optics of a prince's closeness to a much younger woman. This framing, the focus on the optics and the appearance and the speculation, shaped the dramatization, the series engaging with the questions and the innuendo that had surrounded the relationship, rather than simply portraying the documented reality of the genuine friendship. And this framing, the focus on optics and speculation, contributed to the distortion of the relationship, the dramatization engaging with the innuendo and the appearance, rather than the genuine human reality of the bond. The dramatization, like all dramatizations, took liberties with the facts, shaping the story for dramatic effect and departing in various ways from the documented reality of the relationship. A dramatization is not a documentary, and the series, in portraying the friendship, shaped the story for dramatic effect, taking liberties with the facts, departing in various ways from the documented reality. The demands of drama, the need for narrative and tension and effect, shaped the portrayal, the series presenting a dramatized version of the relationship rather than a strict account of the documented facts. The dramatization altered details, shaped events for effect, presented the relationship through the lens of drama rather than the lens of documented fact. And these liberties, these departures from the documented reality, contributed to the distortion of the relationship, the dramatized version presenting a shaped and altered account rather than the genuine reality of the bond. The dramatization was thus a distortion in its own right, the demands of drama shaping a portrayal that departed from the documented facts, presenting a dramatized version of the relationship rather than its genuine reality. The effect of the dramatization on the public perception of the friendship was considerable, the portrayal reaching a vast audience and shaping the understanding of the relationship for the many who watched it. The series was enormously popular and influential, and its portrayal of the friendship reached a vast audience, shaping the public perception of the relationship for the millions who watched it. For many people, the dramatized version became the understood version of the relationship, the portrayal in the series shaping their understanding of the bond between Penny and Philip. The dramatization thus had a considerable effect on the public perception, the portrayal reaching a vast audience and shaping the understanding of the relationship, the dramatized version becoming, for many, the understood version of the bond. And this effect, the shaping of public perception by the dramatization, contributed to the distortion of the relationship, the dramatized version shaping the understanding of the bond for the many who watched it, often at the expense of the documented reality. The difference between the dramatized version and the documented reality is significant, because the dramatization, with its focus on optics and its dramatic liberties, presented a version of the relationship that did not always reflect the genuine nature of the bond. The dramatized version, shaped by the demands of drama and the focus on optics and speculation, differed from the documented reality of the genuine friendship in significant ways. The documented reality was a genuine friendship, rooted in shared passion and forged in shared grief, known to and accepted by the royal family. The dramatized version, with its focus on optics and its engagement with speculation and its dramatic liberties, presented a version that engaged with the innuendo and the appearance rather than simply portraying the genuine reality of the bond. The difference between the two, the genuine friendship of the documented reality and the optics-focused and dramatically shaped version of the dramatization, is significant. The dramatized version, not always reflecting the genuine nature of the bond, the portrayal departing in various ways from the documented reality of the genuine friendship. The controversy that surrounded the dramatization, the criticism of its portrayal of events, reflected the recognition that the dramatized version departed from the documented reality and risked distorting the understanding of the relationship. The dramatization of the royal family in the series was the subject of considerable controversy and criticism, with many objecting to the liberties it took with the facts, the ways in which it shaped and altered events for dramatic effect. The portrayal of the friendship between Penny and Philip was part of this larger controversy, the criticism of the series, reflecting the recognition that its dramatized versions departed from the documented reality and risked distorting the understanding of real people and real events. The controversy reflected a genuine concern, the recognition that the dramatization, watched by millions and shaping public perception, presented versions of real events that departed from the documented facts, risking the distortion of the understanding of real people and real relationships. And this controversy, the criticism of the dramatization's liberties, reflected the genuine concern that the dramatized version of the friendship, like the dramatized versions of other events, risked distorting the public understanding of the genuine reality. The combination of tabloid speculation and popular dramatization, then, shaped a public perception of the friendship that often departed from the documented reality, the innuendo and the drama together obscuring the genuine human bond. The friendship between Penny and Philip was distorted by the combination of tabloid speculation and popular dramatization, the innuendo of the press and the liberties of the drama together shaping a public perception that often departed from the documented reality. The tabloid speculation sexualized the friendship, suggesting a romance that was never substantiated. The dramatization framed the relationship in terms of its optics and took dramatic liberties, presenting a shaped version that engaged with the speculation. And together, the speculation and the dramatization shaped a public perception that obscured the genuine human bond, the innuendo and the drama together distorting the understanding of the relationship, the documented reality of the genuine friendship obscured by the speculation and the dramatization that surrounded it. The genuine human reality of the friendship, obscured by the speculation and the dramatization, deserves to be recovered and recognized. The bond between Penny and Philip, seen for what it genuinely was, rather than for the distorted version that the innuendo and the drama have presented. The genuine reality of the friendship, the bond rooted in shared passion and forged in shared grief, known to and accepted by the royal family, deserves to be recognized against the distortions of the speculation and the dramatization. The friendship was a genuine and admirable thing, the kindness of a man toward a grieving mother, the companionship of two people who shared a passion and understood each other, a bond that enriched both their lives and that was accepted and welcomed by the royal family. This genuine reality deserves to be recovered against the distortions, the bond seen for the genuine friendship it was, rather than the sexualized or dramatized version that the innuendo and the drama have presented. And the recovery of this genuine reality, the recognition of the friendship for what it genuinely was, is the honest course, the seeing of the bond clearly against the distortions that have obscured it. The friendship, genuine and admirable as it was, would continue through the final years of Philip's life, the bond enduring into the period of his retirement and decline, Penny remaining a constant presence to the end. The friendship that had developed over the decades, that had been distorted by speculation and dramatization, but that was genuine and admirable in its reality, would continue through the final years of Philip's life, enduring into the period of his retirement and his decline. Penny would remain a constant presence in Philip's life through these final years, the friendship enduring to the end, the bond lasting through the decades and into the final phase of Philip's existence. How the friendship endured through Philip's final years, how Penny remained a constant presence through the period of his retirement and decline, and what the bond meant in the final phase of Philip's life, is where the story turns next. Because the friendship, genuine and enduring, would last through Philip's final years, and it is to that final phase, the enduring of the bond to the end, that we now turn. That final phase, the enduring of the friendship, is where we go now. The friendship between Penny and Philip, genuine and enduring as it was, lasted through the final years of Philip's life, the bond remaining constant through the period of his retirement and his gradual decline. The endurance of the friendship into Philip's final years, Penny's constant presence through the last phase of his life, reflects the genuine depth and the lasting nature of the bond, a friendship that had developed over the decades and that remained constant to the very end of Philip's existence. Philip retired from public life in 2017, withdrawing from the official duties that he had performed for so many decades, beginning the final phase of his life away from the public eye. After a lifetime of public service at the side of the Queen, Philip stepped back from his official role, retiring from the public duties that had occupied him for so long. He withdrew from the round of engagements and appearances that had filled his life, stepping back into a quieter existence, away from the public eye. And he spent much of his retirement at a cottage on the Sandringham estate, a place of quiet and retreat where he passed his final years, withdrawn from the public world into a more private existence. The retirement marked the beginning of the final phase of Philip's life, the withdrawal from public duties into a quieter existence, the elderly prince passing his final years in retreat at the Sandringham cottage. Through this final phase of Philip's life, Penny remained a constant presence, continuing her friendship with him into his retirement, remaining a regular visitor to the place where he spent his final years. The friendship did not end with Philip's retirement, but continued through it, Penny remaining a constant presence in his life, a regular visitor to the cottage where he passed his final years. She continued to visit him, to spend time with him, to maintain the companionship that had developed over the decades, remaining a constant figure in his life, even as he withdrew from the public world. The continuation of the friendship into Philip's retirement, Penny's constant presence through the final phase of his life, reflects the genuine depth and the lasting nature of the bond, the friendship enduring beyond Philip's public life into his quieter final years, Penny remaining a constant companion to the end. The constancy of Penny's presence through Philip's final years reflects the genuine and enduring nature of the friendship, a bond that had lasted through the decades and that remained constant into the final phase of Philip's life. The friendship between Penny and Philip was not a passing acquaintance or a temporary connection, but a deep and enduring bond, a relationship that had developed over the decades and that lasted to the very end of Philip's life. The constancy of Penny's presence through Philip's final years, her continued companionship into his retirement and decline, reflects this enduring nature, the friendship a lasting bond that remained constant through the decades and into the final phase of Philip's existence. And this constancy, this endurance of the friendship to the end, is a testament to the genuine depth of the bond, the relationship lasting through the decades and remaining constant into Philip's final years, a friendship of real depth and real endurance. Penny's role in Philip's final years extended to her involvement in the difficult matters that came with his advancing age, including the significant question of his giving up driving after a serious incident. As Philip advanced in age, the difficult questions that come with old age arose, including the question of when he should give up driving, a matter that came to a head after a serious car accident. Philip was involved in a car accident in his later years, an incident that raised the question of whether he should continue to drive, a difficult and sensitive matter for an elderly man being asked to give up his independence. And Penny was involved in the difficult conversation about this matter. Part of the discussion about whether Philip should give up driving, included in the sensitive deliberations about this question. Her involvement in this difficult matter, the sensitive question of Philip giving up driving after his accident, reflects the genuine closeness of the friendship, Penny included in the difficult and personal deliberations about Philip's life, trusted to be part of the sensitive conversations about his welfare and his independence. The involvement reflects the genuine depth of the bond, Penny's place among those close enough to be part of the difficult and personal decisions of Philip's final years. The genuine closeness reflected in Penny's involvement in such matters underscores the central place that she occupied in Philip's life through his final years, a place among those closest to him, trusted with the personal and difficult matters of his life. To be involved in such a sensitive and personal matter as the question of Philip giving up driving was to be among those closest to him, trusted with the difficult and personal decisions of his life, included in the inner circle of those who cared for his welfare. Penny's involvement in this matter reflects the central place she occupied in Philip's life through his final years, her place among those closest to him, her inclusion in the personal and difficult deliberations about his welfare. And this central place, this inclusion among those closest to Philip in his final years, reflects the genuine depth and the lasting nature of the friendship, Penny occupying a place among those closest to Philip to the very end, trusted with the personal and difficult matters of his final years. The friendship through Philip's final years was, like the friendship throughout its history, a genuine bond of companionship and support. The relationship continuing to provide both with the genuine connection that it had always offered. Through Philip's final years, the friendship continued to be what it had always been, a genuine bond of companionship and support. The relationship providing both Penny and Philip with the genuine connection that it had offered throughout its history. The friendship continued to provide Philip with companionship and connection in his final years, the company of a genuine friend in the quiet of his retirement, the bond enriching his final years as it had enriched his life. And it continued to provide Penny with the connection and the relationship that had been valuable to her, the friendship that had developed over the decades remaining a genuine bond to the end. The friendship through Philip's final years was thus a continuation of what it had always been, a genuine bond of companionship and support. The relationship providing both with the genuine connection that it had always offered, the friendship enduring as a genuine bond to the very end of Philip's life. The endurance of the friendship through Philip's final years, the constancy of the bond to the end, stands as a testament to the genuine and lasting nature of the relationship, a friendship that had developed over the decades and that remained constant to the very end. The friendship between Penny and Philip was a genuine and lasting bond, a relationship that had developed over the decades, that had endured through the years, and that remained constant to the very end of Philip's life. The endurance of the friendship through Philip's final years, the constancy of the bond into his retirement and his decline, stands as a testament to this genuine and lasting nature, the relationship a deep and enduring bond that lasted to the end. And this endurance, this constancy of the friendship to the very end of Philip's life, is one of the central truths of the story. The bond between Penny and Philip, a genuine and lasting friendship that endured through the decades and remained constant to the end. A relationship of real depth and real endurance. The friendship would end only with Philip's death, the bond that had lasted for decades and remained constant through his final years coming to its close with the death of the prince in 2021. The friendship between Penny and Philip, a genuine and lasting bond that had developed over the decades and endured to the end, would come to its close only with Philip's death, the relationship ending with the death of the prince. Philip died in April 2021, after his long life and his final years of retirement, and his death brought the friendship to its close, the bond that had lasted for decades, ending with the death of the prince. And Philip's death, and the funeral that followed, would provide the final acknowledgement of the friendship, the inclusion of Penny among the small group of mourners, reflecting the genuine and central place she had occupied in Philip's life. How Philip's death brought the friendship to its close, how Penny's place among the mourners at his funeral reflected the genuine and central place she had occupied in his life, and what the final acknowledgement of the friendship revealed is where the story turns next. That death and that final acknowledgement is where we go now. The friendship between Penny and Philip came to its close with the death of the prince in April 2021, and the funeral that followed provided the final and the most significant acknowledgement of the genuine and central place that Penny had occupied in Philip's life. The circumstances of that funeral, and Penny's place among the small group who attended it, would speak more clearly than any words about the legitimacy and the importance of the friendship. The family's acknowledgement of Penny's place, delivered in the most public and the most significant way. Prince Philip died on the 9th of April 2021 at Windsor Castle, after his long life and his final years of retirement. He was 99 years old, having very nearly reached his 100th year, the end coming to a man who had lived through a century of extraordinary change and who had spent more than 70 years at the side of the Queen. His death was the passing of a figure who had been a constant presence in British public life for decades, the consort of the monarch, the patriarch of the royal family, the man who had given his life to the support of his wife and the institution she embodied. The death of Philip was a significant moment, the passing of a figure of long and constant presence, the end of a life that had spanned a century and that had been devoted to the support of the crown. And his death brought to a close the friendship with Penny, the bond that had lasted for decades, ending with the death of the prince who had been at its center. The funeral of Prince Philip was held on the 17th of April 2021 at St. George's Chapel in Windsor Castle, and it took place under the extraordinary circumstances of the pandemic, with strict limits on the number of mourners who could attend. The funeral was held during the time of the pandemic, when restrictions on gatherings were in force, and these restrictions limited the funeral to a small number of mourners, only 30 people permitted to attend. This limitation, the restriction of the funeral to only 30 mourners, was a consequence of the pandemic, the strict limits on gatherings forcing the funeral to be a small and intimate affair, rather than the grand state occasion that might otherwise have marked the passing of the Queen's husband. The funeral of Prince Philip was thus a small and restricted affair, limited to only 30 mourners by the circumstances of the pandemic, the strict limits on gatherings forcing the funeral to be an intimate gathering of only the closest, rather than the grand occasion that might otherwise have been held. The restriction of the funeral to only 30 mourners meant that those who attended were necessarily the closest of the family and the most important figures in Philip's life. The limitation, forcing a selection of only the most essential. With only 30 places available, the funeral could include only the closest of the family and the most important figures in Philip's life. The restriction forcing a selection of only the most essential mourners. The 30 who attended were the inner circle, the children and the grandchildren, and the closest family, the most important people in Philip's life. The small group of those whose place at the funeral was essential. The limitation thus meant that attendance at the funeral was a mark of the closest connection to Philip, a place among the 30 reserved for only the most important figures in his life, the restriction making attendance a sign of genuine and central closeness to the prince. And among those 30 mourners, among the small group of the closest who attended Philip's funeral, was Penny Knatchbull. Penny was included among the 30, present at the funeral, one of the small group of the closest who attended Philip's farewell. Her inclusion among the 30, at a funeral so restricted that only the closest could attend, was a significant acknowledgement of her place in Philip's life, a recognition that she was one of the most important figures in his world, one of those whose place at his funeral was essential. To be included among the 30, when the restriction forced a selection of only the most essential mourners, was to be acknowledged as one of the closest to Philip, one of the most important people in his life. And Penny's inclusion among that small group, her presence at the restricted funeral, was thus a significant acknowledgement of her place, the family's recognition that she was one of the closest to Philip, one of those whose place at his farewell was essential. The significance of Penny's inclusion among the 30 mourners in the context of the restricted funeral cannot be overstated, because it represented the family's clearest and most public acknowledgement of the legitimacy and the importance of the friendship. The inclusion of Penny among the 30, at a funeral limited by the pandemic to only the closest, was the family's clearest and most public acknowledgement of her place in Philip's life, a demonstration that she was one of the most important figures in his world. The restriction of the funeral made the selection of mourners a significant statement, each place reserved for one of the closest, and the inclusion of Penny among that select group was a clear statement of her place, the family's acknowledgement that she was one of the closest to Philip, one of those whose presence at his funeral was essential. This acknowledgement, delivered in the most public way at the most significant occasion, represented the family's clearest recognition of the legitimacy and the importance of the friendship. The inclusion of Penny among the 30 a demonstration that the bond was genuine and significant and acknowledged by the family. The acknowledgement delivered by Penny's inclusion among the mourners was all the more significant because it was delivered without words, through the simple fact of her presence among the closest, a demonstration more eloquent than any statement. The family did not need to make any statement about the friendship, did not need to declare its legitimacy or its importance, because the simple fact of Penny's inclusion among the 30 mourners spoke more clearly than any words. Her presence among the closest, at the funeral so restricted that only the most essential could attend, was a demonstration of her place that was more eloquent than any statement. The simple fact of her inclusion speaking clearly of the genuine and central place she had occupied in Philip's life. The acknowledgement was thus delivered, not through words, but through the simple fact of Penny's presence. The inclusion of her among the closest mourners, a demonstration of her place more eloquent than any declaration. The family's recognition of the friendship, delivered through the simple and significant fact of her presence at the funeral. The contrast between this acknowledgement and the innuendo that had surrounded the friendship is striking, because the family's clear recognition of Penny's place stands in stark opposition to the speculation that had distorted the bond. The family's acknowledgement of Penny's place, delivered through her inclusion among the closest mourners, stands in stark contrast to the tabloid innuendo that had surrounded the friendship, the speculation that had sexualized and distorted the bond. The innuendo had suggested a hidden scandal, a secret that the palace might conceal. The family's acknowledgement, the inclusion of Penny among the closest mourners, demonstrated the opposite, the genuine and accepted nature of the friendship, the family's recognition of Penny's place. The contrast between the innuendo and the acknowledgement is striking, the speculation that had distorted the bond standing in stark opposition to the family's clear recognition of Penny's genuine place, the inclusion of her among the closest mourners, demonstrating the genuine and accepted nature of the friendship, against the innuendo that had sexualized and distorted it. The acknowledgement of Penny's place at Philip's funeral was, in a sense, the final answer to the question of what the palace knew, the family's recognition of the friendship delivered in the most public and significant way. The question of what the palace knew, the implied scandal of the speculation, was answered finally and clearly by the family's acknowledgement of Penny's place at Philip's funeral. What the palace knew was the genuine friendship, the bond that was accepted and welcomed, and the family's acknowledgement of this, the inclusion of Penny among the closest mourners, was the final and clearest answer to the question. The palace knew not a scandal to be concealed, but a friendship to be honored, and the family's acknowledgement of Penny's place at the funeral, her inclusion among the closest, was the final demonstration of this. The recognition of the genuine friendship delivered in the most public and significant way. The acknowledgement was thus the final answer to the question of what the palace knew. The family's recognition of the genuine friendship delivered through the inclusion of Penny among the closest mourners at Philip's funeral. The friendship between Penny and Philip, then, ended with the death of the prince, but it ended with the family's clear acknowledgement of its genuine and significant nature, the inclusion of Penny among the closest mourners, a final recognition of the bond. The friendship that had developed over the decades, that had been distorted by speculation, but that was genuine and admirable in its reality, ended with the death of Philip, but it ended with the family's clear acknowledgement of its genuine nature, the inclusion of Penny among the closest mourners, a final recognition of the genuine and significant place she had occupied in Philip's life. The friendship ended, but it ended honored and acknowledged, the family's recognition of the bond, delivered through the inclusion of Penny among the closest mourners, the genuine friendship acknowledged and honored at its close. And this ending, the friendship honored and acknowledged at its close, is a fitting conclusion to the genuine and admirable bond, the relationship recognized and honored by the family at the death of the prince who had been at its center. The death of Philip and the acknowledgement of the friendship at his funeral bring the story toward its conclusion. The genuine and admirable bond between Penny and Philip, honored at its close, and ready now for a final reckoning. The friendship that had developed over the decades, that had been forged in grief and rooted in shared passion, that had been distorted by speculation, but that was genuine and admirable in its reality, that had been accepted by the royal family and acknowledged at Philip's funeral, is ready now for a final reckoning, an honest verdict on the genuine bond and the speculation that surrounded it. How the whole story of Penny and Philip should finally be understood, what the genuine friendship and the speculation that distorted it reveal, and what the final reckoning with this much speculated relationship amounts to, is where the story comes to its close. That final reckoning, the verdict on the genuine bond and the speculation that surrounded it, is where we go now. The friendship between Penny and Philip ended with the death of the prince, but Penny's place within the royal family did not end with it, because her bond with the family extended beyond Philip to the Queen and the wider royal circle, and her continued presence in the royal world after Philip's death confirmed the genuine and accepted nature of her place. The afterlife of the friendship, Penny's continued connection to the royal family after Philip was gone, is a further confirmation of the truth that the speculation had obscured, the genuine and accepted place that Penny occupied in the royal world. After Philip's death, Penny's relationship with the Queen continued, the bond between the two women enduring beyond the death of the friend they had both known. Penny had been close not only to Philip but to the Queen as well, and this relationship between the two women did not end with Philip's death, but continued beyond it. The bond between Penny and the Queen, enduring even after the friend they had shared was gone. The two women maintained their connection, Penny continuing to visit and to spend time with the Queen, the relationship between them continuing in the period after Philip's death. This continuation of the relationship between Penny and the Queen, the bond enduring beyond Philip's death, is a significant confirmation of the genuine nature of Penny's place in the royal family. The relationship with the Queen, a genuine bond in its own right, that continued even after the friend they had shared was gone. The friendship between Penny and Philip had been part of a larger web of relationships, a genuine connection to the royal family that extended beyond Philip to the Queen and the wider family. And this larger connection endured beyond Philip's death, Penny's place in the royal world continuing even after the friend at its center was gone. Penny's continued presence in the royal world after Philip's death was confirmed by her attendance at the most significant royal occasions, including the funeral of the Queen herself. When the Queen died in September 2022, Penny attended her funeral, present at the farewell to the monarch she had known and valued. Her attendance at the Queen's funeral, her presence at this most significant of royal occasions, confirmed her continued place in the royal world, her genuine connection to the royal family enduring beyond the deaths of both Philip and the Queen. The attendance at the Queen's funeral, the presence at this significant occasion, was a further confirmation of the genuine and accepted nature of Penny's place, her continued presence in the royal world, demonstrating the genuine connection she had maintained, the place she had occupied in the royal family, enduring beyond the deaths of those she had been closest to. Penny's attendance at the Queen's funeral thus confirmed her continued place in the royal world, the genuine connection she had maintained, enduring beyond the deaths of both Philip and the Queen. The endurance of Penny's place in the royal family, beyond the deaths of both Philip and the Queen, confirms the genuine and accepted nature of her connection to the royal world, a place that did not depend solely on her friendship with Philip, but that was a genuine connection in its own right. Penny's place in the royal family was not merely a function of her friendship with Philip, but a genuine connection to the royal world in its own right, a place that endured beyond Philip's death, and that was confirmed by her continued presence at the most significant royal occasions. Her relationship with the Queen continued after Philip's death. Her presence at the Queen's funeral confirmed her continued place, and her genuine connection to the royal family, the place she occupied in the royal world, endured beyond the deaths of both Philip and the Queen, a genuine connection that did not depend solely on her friendship with Philip, but that was a real place in the royal world in its own right. This endurance, this continuation of Penny's place beyond the deaths of those she had been closest to, confirms the genuine and accepted nature of her connection to the royal family, a real place in the royal world, rather than a mere function of her friendship with Philip. The genuine and enduring nature of Penny's place in the royal family stands as a final refutation of the speculation that had surrounded her friendship with Philip, the reality of her accepted and enduring place, demonstrating the emptiness of the innuendo. The speculation had suggested that Penny's friendship with Philip was a scandal, a hidden romance, an improper bond. The reality of her genuine and accepted and enduring place in the royal family, her continued connection to the royal world beyond Philip's death, demonstrates the emptiness of this speculation, the genuine and legitimate nature of her place. A woman who was the subject of a genuine scandal, an improper romance with the Queen's husband, would not have maintained a genuine and accepted place in the royal family after Philip's death, would not have continued her relationship with the Queen, would not have attended the Queen's funeral as a valued connection of the family. The reality of Penny's enduring place, her continued connection to the royal world, demonstrates the emptiness of the speculation, the genuine and accepted nature of her place, refuting the innuendo that had surrounded her friendship with Philip. Her enduring place in the royal family stands as a final refutation of the speculation, the reality of her accepted and continued connection, demonstrating the genuine and legitimate nature of the bond. The whole pattern of Penny's relationship with the royal family, from her friendship with Philip to her continued connection after his death, reveals a genuine and accepted place in the royal world, a reality entirely at odds with the scandal that the speculation had suggested. The pattern of Penny's relationship with the royal family is a pattern of genuine connection and genuine acceptance, from her marriage into the family, to her friendship with Philip, to her relationship with the Queen, to her continued place after the deaths of both. At every point, the pattern is one of genuine connection and genuine acceptance, Penny occupying a real and valued place in the royal world, accepted and welcomed by the family, maintaining genuine relationships with its members. This pattern, the genuine connection and acceptance throughout, reveals a reality entirely at odds with the scandal that the speculation had suggested. The genuine and accepted place that Penny occupied in the royal world, refuting the innuendo of a hidden scandal. The whole pattern of Penny's relationship with the royal family, the genuine connection and acceptance from beginning to end, reveals a reality of genuine and accepted place, entirely at odds with the scandal that the speculation had suggested. The afterlife of the friendship, then, Penny's continued place in the royal family after Philip's death, is a further confirmation of the truth that the speculation had obscured, the genuine and accepted nature of the bond, and of Penny's place in the royal world. The friendship between Penny and Philip had been genuine and admirable, accepted and welcomed by the royal family, and Penny's continued place in the royal world after Philip's death is a further confirmation of this truth, the genuine and accepted nature of the bond, demonstrated by the endurance of her place beyond Philip's death. The afterlife of the friendship, the continuation of Penny's connection to the royal family, confirms the genuine and accepted nature of the bond, the reality that the speculation had obscured, demonstrated by the endurance of Penny's place in the royal world. And this confirmation, the afterlife of the friendship, demonstrating the genuine and accepted nature of the bond, is a further refutation of the speculation, the truth that the innuendo had obscured, confirmed by the reality of Penny's enduring place in the royal family. The story of Penny and Philip, then, is a story whose truth has been obscured by speculation, but whose reality, confirmed at every point, is a genuine and admirable friendship, accepted by the royal family and enduring in its connections beyond the deaths of those at its center. The truth of the story, obscured by the speculation and the dramatization, is a genuine and admirable friendship, a bond rooted in shared passion and forged in shared grief, accepted and welcomed by the royal family, enduring in its connections beyond the deaths of Philip and the Queen. This truth, confirmed at every point by the genuine connection and acceptance that marked Penny's relationship with the royal family, is the reality that the speculation had obscured, the genuine and admirable friendship that the innuendo had distorted, and the recovery of this truth, the recognition of the genuine and admirable friendship against the distortions of the speculation, is the honest course, the seeing of the bond clearly for the genuine and admirable thing it was. This brings the story to its final reckoning, the honest verdict on the genuine friendship and the speculation that surrounded it, the recognition of the truth that has been obscured, and the lessons that the story reveals. The story of Penny and Philip, a genuine and admirable friendship distorted by speculation, is ready now for a final reckoning, an honest verdict on the genuine bond and the innuendo that surrounded it, a recognition of the truth that has been obscured, and the lessons that the story reveals about the friendship itself and about the culture that distorted it. How the whole story should finally be understood, what the genuine friendship reveals and what the speculation that distorted it reveals, and what the final verdict on this much speculated relationship amounts to, is where the story comes to its close. That final reckoning, the verdict on the genuine bond and the culture that distorted it, is where we go now. The story of Penny Knatchbull and Prince Philip comes, at last, to its reckoning, and the honest verdict on the relationship is at once simpler and more interesting than the speculation that has surrounded it. For when the innuendo is set aside and the documented reality is allowed to speak, what emerges is the story of a genuine friendship, one of the most admirable bonds of Philip's life, and a portrait of how a culture hungry for scandal can take such a friendship and distort it beyond recognition. The time has come to weigh it all, the genuine bond and the speculation that obscured it, and to render an honest judgment on what the real relationship was and what the distortion of it reveals. The honest verdict on the friendship itself must begin with the recognition that it was a genuine and an admirable thing, a bond rooted in shared passion and forged in shared grief, one of the closest relationships of Prince Philip's life. The friendship between Penny and Philip was, by all the documented evidence, a genuine friendship, a bond of real depth and real significance, one of the most important relationships of Philip's later decades. It had its roots in a shared passion, the sport of carriage driving that the two of them came to share, the genuine common interest that bonded them. It was forged in shared grief, the kindness that Philip showed to Penny in the aftermath of her daughter's death, the support offered to a grieving mother that formed the foundation of the bond, and it grew into a deep and constant companionship, a relationship of genuine trust and mutual support, one of the closest bonds of Philip's life. The honest verdict on the friendship is that it was a genuine and admirable thing, a bond of real depth rooted in shared passion and forged in shared grief, one of the most significant relationships of Philip's later years. The friendship reflected, in its genuine and admirable nature, the better qualities of both the people involved, the kindness and the empathy of Philip, and the genuine connection that the bond provided to both. The friendship reflected well on Philip, revealing the kindness and the empathy that lay behind his gruff exterior, the capacity for genuine compassion that prompted him to reach out to a grieving mother and to offer her support and engagement. It reflected the genuine depth of his character, the capacity for real friendship and real companionship that his constrained royal life otherwise had little room for. And it reflected the genuine connection that the bond provided to both, the companionship and the support and the engagement that enriched both their lives, the relationship that met real needs in both the lonely prince and the grieving mother. The friendship reflected, in its genuine nature, the better qualities of both the people involved, the kindness and the empathy of Philip, and the genuine connection that the bond provided, a relationship that revealed the genuine depth and the genuine humanity of those involved. The inversion of the implied scandal, the answer to the question of what the palace knew, is the central revelation of the honest verdict, because what the palace knew was not a scandal to be concealed, but a genuine friendship to be welcomed. The question of what the palace knew, the implied scandal of the speculation, is answered by the honest verdict in a way that inverts the implied scandal entirely. What the palace knew was the genuine friendship, the bond that was accepted and welcomed, the relationship that the royal family valued and embraced. The Queen knew of the friendship and valued Penny in her own right. The family knew of the bond and accepted it, relying on Penny as a connection to the outside world. And the family acknowledged the friendship clearly, including Penny among the closest mourners at Philip's funeral, and maintaining their connection with her after his death. What the palace knew was thus not a scandal to be concealed, but a genuine friendship to be welcomed. The implied scandal of the speculation, inverted by the reality of the family's knowledge and acceptance of a genuine bond. The central revelation of the honest verdict is this inversion, the answer to the question of what the palace knew being not a hidden scandal, but a genuine and accepted friendship. The honest verdict on the speculation, set against the genuine friendship, is that it was an unsubstantiated innuendo that distorted a genuine human bond, a product of the appetite for scandal, rather than any evidence of impropriety. The speculation that surrounded the friendship, the innuendo that suggested a romance, was unsubstantiated, resting on no evidence, never proven or established. It was a product of the appetite for royal scandal, the hunger of the press and the public for stories of impropriety, the readiness to see scandal in a close friendship between a man and a younger woman. And it distorted a genuine human bond, sexualizing a friendship that had grown out of grief and kindness, casting a salacious shadow over a relationship that was, by all the evidence, a genuine and admirable friendship. The honest verdict on the speculation is that it was an unsubstantiated innuendo, a product of the appetite for scandal, rather than any evidence of impropriety, a distortion of a genuine human bond that did a disservice to the people involved and to the memory of the friendship. The particular wrong of the speculation, the disservice it did, was to sexualize a bond that had grown out of a mother's grief, distorting one of the most genuine and admirable aspects of the relationship. The friendship had grown, as we have seen, out of the kindness of a man toward a grieving mother, the support offered to a woman who had lost her young daughter. To sexualize this bond, to cast over it the suggestion of a romance, was to distort one of the most genuine and admirable aspects of the relationship, the compassion and the kindness at its foundation. It was a particular wrong, the sexualizing of a bond that had grown out of grief and kindness, the casting of a salacious shadow over a relationship founded on compassion and support. And this wrong, the disservice done to the genuine and admirable bond, is part of the honest verdict on the speculation, the recognition that the innuendo not only rested on no evidence, but actively distorted one of the most genuine and admirable aspects of the relationship, the kindness shown to a grieving mother, and the genuine friendship that grew from it. The human truth at the heart of the story, recovered against the distortions of the speculation, is the truth of two people who found genuine companionship and understanding in each other, an aging prince and a grieving mother whose friendship enriched both their lives. At the heart of the story, beneath the speculation and the dramatization, is a simple human truth, the truth of two people who found in each other genuine companionship and understanding. Philip was a lonely and capable man, confined within a constrained royal role, in need of genuine companionship. Penny was a grieving mother, devastated by the loss of her young daughter, in need of support and engagement. And the two of them found in each other what they needed, a genuine companionship and understanding, a friendship that enriched both their lives, the lonely prince and the grieving mother finding in each other the genuine connection that their circumstances had denied them. This human truth, the two people who found genuine companionship in each other, is the truth at the heart of the story. The genuine human reality that the speculation had obscured, the simple and admirable truth of an aging prince and a grieving mother whose friendship enriched both their lives. The dignity owed to this friendship, and to Penny in particular, requires the recognition of the genuine bond against the innuendo, the seeing of the relationship for the admirable thing it was, rather than the scandal that the speculation had suggested. The genuine friendship between Penny and Philip, and Penny herself, are owed a dignity that the speculation had denied them, the recognition of the genuine bond against the innuendo that had distorted it. Penny is owed the recognition that her friendship with Philip was a genuine and admirable thing, a bond that had helped her through her grief and that had been accepted by the royal family, rather than the scandal that the speculation had suggested. The friendship is owed the recognition that it was a genuine and admirable relationship, a bond rooted in shared passion and forged in shared grief, rather than the salacious thing that the innuendo had made of it. And this dignity, owed to the friendship and to Penny, requires the recognition of the genuine bond against the innuendo, the seeing of the relationship for the admirable thing it was, the recovery of the genuine human reality against the distortions of the speculation. To grant this dignity is to recognize the genuine friendship for what it was, to set aside the innuendo, to see Penny and the bond she shared with Philip with the respect and the recognition that the genuine and admirable relationship deserves. The deeper truth that the story reveals, beyond the particular friendship, is the way a culture hungry for scandal can take a genuine human relationship and sexualize and distort it, the appetite for impropriety overriding the recognition of genuine human bonds. The story of Penny and Philip reveals a deeper truth about the culture that distorted it, the way a culture hungry for scandal can take a genuine human relationship and reduce it to innuendo, sexualizing, and distorting a bond that was, in reality, a genuine and admirable friendship. The appetite for scandal, the hunger for stories of royal impropriety, overrode the recognition of the genuine human bond, casting a salacious shadow over a friendship that had grown out of grief and kindness. This dynamic, the way the appetite for scandal distorts genuine human relationships, is the deeper truth that the story reveals. The culture hungry for impropriety, taking a genuine friendship and reducing it to innuendo. The recognition of the genuine human bond, overridden by the appetite for scandal. And this truth, the way a culture hungry for scandal distorts genuine human relationships, is the larger lesson of the story. The distortion of the genuine friendship between Penny and Philip, an example of the way the appetite for scandal can override the recognition of genuine human bonds. The particular difficulty that the story reveals, the assumption that a close friendship between a man and a woman must be romantic, is part of this deeper truth. The reluctance to accept genuine friendships between men and women, contributing to the distortion of the bond. The story reveals, in particular, the difficulty that the culture has in accepting a close friendship between a man and a woman as a genuine friendship, the assumption that such closeness must be romantic, the reluctance to recognize that a deep bond between a man and a woman can be a friendship rather than a romance. This assumption, this reluctance to accept genuine friendships between men and women, contributed to the distortion of the bond between Penny and Philip. The speculation, arising in part from the assumption that their closeness must be romantic. And this difficulty, this reluctance to accept genuine friendships between men and women, is part of the deeper truth that the story reveals. The distortion of the friendship between Penny and Philip, reflecting a broader difficulty in recognizing that deep bonds between men and women can be genuine friendships, that closeness and intimacy need not be romantic, that a relationship can be a friendship rather than a romance. When we think of Penny Knatchbull and Prince Philip now, then, we should think of them not through the lens of the speculation that distorted their bond, but through the recognition of the genuine friendship that they shared, an aging prince and a grieving mother who found genuine companionship in each other. We should remember the grief that lay at the foundation of the friendship, the death of Penny's young daughter, and the kindness that Philip showed to her in her devastation. We should remember the shared passion that bonded them, the sport of carriage driving that they came to share, the genuine common interest that brought them together. We should remember the genuine companionship that the friendship provided, the trust and the support, and the understanding that enriched both their lives. We should remember the acceptance of the royal family, the Queen's knowledge and welcome of the bond, the family's acknowledgement of Penny's place. And we should set aside the speculation that distorted the friendship, the innuendo that sexualized a genuine bond, the appetite for scandal that reduced a genuine human relationship to salacious suggestion. When we think of Penny and Philip now, we should think of them through the recognition of the genuine friendship they shared, the aging prince and the grieving mother who found in each other the genuine companionship and understanding that their circumstances had denied them. The real relationship between Penny Knatchbull and Prince Philip was a genuine friendship, one of the most admirable bonds of Philip's life, a relationship rooted in shared passion and forged in shared grief, accepted and welcomed by the royal family, distorted by speculation, but genuine and admirable in its reality. What the palace knew was not a scandal to be concealed, but a genuine friendship to be welcomed, the implied scandal of the speculation inverted by the reality of the family's knowledge and acceptance of a genuine bond. And the distortion of the friendship by speculation reveals the deeper truth about the culture that distorted it, the way a culture hungry for scandal can take a genuine human relationship and reduce it to innuendo, sexualizing, and distorting a bond that was, in reality, a genuine and admirable friendship. The real relationship was a friendship, genuine and admirable, and the speculation that surrounded it was a distortion, an innuendo that did a disservice to the people involved and to the memory of the bond. In the end, the story of Penny and Philip is a story not of scandal, but of friendship, not of impropriety, but of genuine human connection, the story of an aging prince and a grieving mother who found in each other a genuine companionship that enriched both their lives and that lasted to the end. It is a story of kindness, the kindness that Philip showed to a grieving mother in her darkest hour. It is a story of shared passion, the sport that bonded them and gave their friendship its substance. It is a story of genuine companionship, the trust and the support and the understanding that they found in each other. And it is a story of a genuine friendship honored at its close, the inclusion of Penny among the closest mourners at Philip's funeral, a final acknowledgement of the genuine and central place she had occupied in his life. The story of Penny and Philip is a story of friendship, genuine and admirable, distorted by speculation, but real and significant in its truth. The bond between an aging prince and a grieving mother who found in each other a genuine companionship that enriched both their lives. And when the speculation has faded, when the innuendo is forgotten, what will remain is the truth of the genuine friendship, the bond between Penny Knatchbull and Prince Philip, that was, in its reality, one of the most admirable relationships of his life, a friendship rooted in shared passion and forged in shared grief, a genuine human connection that enriched both their lives and that deserves, at last, to be remembered for the genuine and admirable thing it was. The real relationship between Penny Knatchbull and Prince Philip was a friendship, and the truth of that friendship, recovered against the distortions of the speculation, is the lasting truth of the story, the genuine and admirable bond that will remain when the innuendo has faded, the friendship of an aging prince and a grieving mother that was, in its reality, one of the good and genuine things in both their lives. There is a particular kind of person the British establishment has always relied upon, but never publicly celebrated. They appear in the margins of official histories. They do not give interviews. Their names do not appear in the indexes of the books written about the people they served. They are the ones who knew, who were trusted with the things that could not be written down, and who carried that knowledge for the rest of their lives, without ever once setting it down for anyone else to pick up. Penny Knatchbull is one of those people. Ingrid Seward said it plainly. She was not merely a keeper of Philip's secrets, she was a keeper of the family's secrets. The distinction matters. Philip's secrets, whatever they were, whatever their precise nature, were personal. The family's secrets were institutional. They were the secrets of the monarchy itself, of the House of Windsor, of the most scrutinized and most protected institution in British public life. To be trusted with both categories of confidence, simultaneously, over 3 decades, requires a specific quality of person. It requires someone who has so thoroughly internalized the value of discretion that it has ceased to feel like restraint and become simply the way they move through the world. Penny Knatchbull has never once, in 30 years, given an interview about her relationship with Philip. She has never published a memoir. She has never corrected the record when it was wrong about her. She has never confirmed the parts that were right. When the Crown broadcast a version of her life to 50 million people, a version that people who knew her said was significantly distorted, she did not respond. The silence is not passive. It is not the silence of someone who has nothing to say. It is the silence of someone who has decided, with full awareness of what she is declining to do, that the knowledge she carries belongs to the relationship and not to the public record. This is an unusual choice in the contemporary world. The memoir industrial complex, the ghost-written revelations of people who were adjacent to power, the carefully managed leaks and counter-leaks of palace insiders, is one of the defining features of how royal history gets written in real time. There is always someone willing to talk. There is always a book deal that turns the private into the published. Penny never took it. Consider what she could have written. She was present at Wood Farm during Philip's final years. She knew him in a way that almost no one else did, outside the formal structures of the palace, away from the ceremonial demands, in the daily reality of a man in extreme old age living out his chosen life. She witnessed the last decade of the second longest marriage in British royal history from a position of unusual intimacy. She had 30 years of shared conversations, shared competition, shared grief, and shared joy to draw on. The book she could have written would have been the most significant royal memoir of the decade. She did not write it. This choice carries its own meaning. It says something about what she believed the relationship was and what she believed it deserved. A relationship you sell is a different kind of relationship than one you protect. The act of protection is itself a statement about value, about the belief that some things are diminished, not preserved, by being translated into public consumption. Seward wrote that Penny never betrayed Philip. The word betrayed is specific. Betrayal implies trust, a prior agreement, implicit or explicit, that certain things would be held. Seward's use of the word suggests that Philip had extended to Penny a degree of trust that he extended to very few people, and that she had honored it, without exception, across the full length of their friendship and beyond his death. What did that trust feel like, from the inside? Philip was not a man who trusted easily. His childhood had taught him the cost of dependence on people who might not stay, parents who disappeared, a family fractured by exile and illness and war. His adult life had been spent in an institution that required the management of trust as a professional function, in which every relationship carried an overlay of hierarchy and protocol that made genuine intimacy structurally difficult. He had advisors, courtiers, protection officers, family, all of them present, all of them connected to him, none of them entirely free of the institutional dimension that colored every interaction. Penny was free of it. She was not employed by the palace. She held no official role. She was not there because protocol demanded it, or because her position required it. She was there because Philip wanted her there, and she came because she wanted to come. And the relationship between them existed entirely outside the machinery of the institution that governed the rest of his life. That freedom was precious to him. The "and also Penny" story is funny on the surface. The image of a duke reviewing guest lists and appending the same name every time is almost domestic in its ordinariness. But underneath the joke is the picture of a man who had found someone he wanted near him, consistently, across decades, and who was not prepared to organize any significant portion of his life without her present in it. She was the person he drove horses with. She was the person who came to Norfolk. She was the person the Queen sent when she needed Philip to do something he didn't want to do. She was the person in the chapel on the 17th of April, taking the last available seat on the list of 30. The weight she has carried since his death. The weight of knowing what the relationship actually was, while the world argued about it, while television dramatized it, while biographers speculated about it, is something that only she can measure. She carries it without complaint, without comment, without any visible sign of the burden it represents. That composure is not an accident. It is a skill, learned across decades of navigating the space between what is known and what can be said. She learned it, in part, by watching the institution itself, by watching how the palace manages information, how it protects its inhabitants, how it decides what is visible and what remains interior. She became, in that respect, more royal than many of the people born into the family. She understood the rules better than some of those the rules were written to protect. She applied them to herself with a rigor that the palace itself, in its more chaotic recent years, has not always managed. The secrets she keeps are not dramatic necessarily. They may not be the secrets the tabloids imagined, the hidden passion, the clandestine meetings, the grand illicit romance. They may be quieter than that. The conversations in Norfolk about things Philip would never have discussed publicly, the observations he made about his family and his marriage and his life, the things a man says to someone he trusts completely when he is old and tired and no longer performing for anyone. Those are the secrets that are, in many ways, more intimate than any physical revelation could be. The words a person speaks in their honesty, to the one person they have decided is safe, those are the real interior of a life. They are also, by their nature, the most completely unknowable to anyone outside the room. Penny knows what was said in those rooms. She will take it with her. This is the final form of her loyalty to him, not simply that she never spoke about the relationship while it was alive, but that she has not spoken about it since he died, when the obligation of discretion could reasonably be argued to have ended. She has continued to maintain silence, not because anyone requires it of her, but because she has decided that the life they shared, whatever it was, deserves better than to be passed and debated and commodified in print. There is a word for this quality. It is not simply discretion, though it includes discretion. It is a kind of dignity, a belief that some things are worth more held than shared, that the value of a relationship is not measured by how widely its contents can be distributed. Philip, who had spent his entire adult life having his life managed and mediated and interpreted by other people, found in Penny someone who managed nothing and mediated nothing and interpreted nothing, who simply received what he offered and held it. That quality, which is rarer than it sounds, may be the most important thing she ever gave him. She continues to hold it. The question of what the palace knew, the question that sits at the center of this story, has an answer that is both simpler and more complex than anything the tabloids ever imagined. The palace knew that Penny Knatchbull was one of the most important people in Philip's life. It accommodated that importance. It protected it. It inscribed it into the guest list of 30. And it has, since his death, continued to maintain the same silence it always maintained, because the truth, whatever form it takes, belongs to her. She is its custodian. She always was. Step back from the particulars of Penny Knatchbull and Prince Philip for a moment, from the carriage driving and the wood farm visits and also Penny nickname and the seat at the funeral, and the story begins to look less like an individual narrative and more like an instance of something structural, something that has been true of the British monarchy and of the institutions like it for as long as they have existed. The pattern is this: powerful men in constrained roles find relief outside the boundaries of those roles. They find it in women who are not their wives, in friendships that are not entirely neutral, in relationships that the institution tolerates because the alternative, the complete emotional isolation of the person on whom the institution depends, produces its own problems. Philip was not the first royal to have a companion of this kind. He was not even the first in his immediate family's generation. The history of the British monarchy is populated with such figures, the women who were present in ways that official history doesn't quite account for, whose proximity to power was intimate enough to attract attention and ambiguous enough to resist definitive characterization. The Duchess of Abercorn, Sasha, who described a highly charged chemistry with Philip; Hélène Corday, the childhood friend whose refusal to name the father of her children kept a rumor alive for 40 years. The pattern of Philip's female friendships, stretching across 6 decades, is not coincidental. It reflects something specific about the psychological reality of his position. He was a man who had been required, at 30 years old, to subordinate his entire identity to an institutional role. He had given up his name, his career, his ambitions, his freedom of movement. He had accepted a life in which the most important relationship he would ever have, his marriage, was simultaneously the thing that constrained him most completely. He loved the Queen. He was also, by virtue of that love and that marriage, permanently second, permanently behind, permanently in service to something that would always take precedence over his own needs and preferences. The female friendships were not, in this reading, a failure of character. They were a human response to an inhuman constraint. They were the places where Philip could be himself, not the prince consort, not the queen's husband, not the duke walking 2 steps behind, but simply Philip, a man with opinions and energy and humor and loneliness, who needed, occasionally, to be in a room with someone who was interested in him rather than in his position. This is not unique to Philip. It is not even unique to monarchy. The history of powerful institutions, not just royal ones, but military, political, ecclesiastical, is full of the same pattern. Men whose public roles demand total self-subordination find private spaces where the subordination can temporarily be set aside. Women who are trusted, discreet, and genuinely connected to the man, rather than to his title, become the keepers of the interior life that the institution does not permit to be publicly expressed. What makes the royal case specific, and what makes Penny's story particularly revealing, is the degree to which the institution was aware of and complicit in the dynamic. The palace did not stumble into the arrangement of Penny Knatchbull's presence in Philip's life. It chose it. The Queen chose it. The guest list for the funeral chose it. The palace's management of the relationship, keeping it visible enough to be normalized, protecting it strongly enough to prevent its characterization as scandal, was deliberate. This is the monarchy, doing what it has always done when confronted with human complexity, absorbing it, accommodating it, and presenting to the public a version of events that preserves the institutional surface while permitting the human reality to continue underneath. The version it presented was, Penny is a friend of the family. Both the Queen and Philip are fond of her. She is a trusted companion who shares their love of equestrian sport. She is the kind of person the royal family gathers around itself, loyal, discreet, of good family, impeccably behaved. All of that was true. What it declined to address was the question of why, specifically, this woman, rather than the dozens of other trusted companions and equestrian enthusiasts who had been in Philip's social world across 60 years, why this one, consistently, for 30 years, at every event, at Wood Farm, at the funeral, why the Queen sent her rather than going herself when the driving license needed to be surrendered. The institutional answer, she is a friend of the family, is simultaneously accurate and insufficient. It is the kind of answer that works as long as no one presses it, which is precisely why the palace never invited anyone to press it. The story of Penny Knatchbull and Prince Philip is not, at its deepest level, a story about whether a 90-year-old man was conducting a romantic affair. That question, while genuinely unanswerable from outside, is also somewhat beside the point, or at least beside the larger point. The larger point is about what it costs to be the person the monarch married, what it costs to spend 70 years 2 steps behind, to have your name erased from your children's dynastic identity, to accept that the most important institution in your country will always take precedence over the most important relationship in your life. Philip paid those costs. He paid them without public complaint, with remarkable endurance, and with what appears to have been genuine love for the woman at the center of it all. But costs accumulate, and what accumulates must find somewhere to go. Penny was where it went. She received what the institution could not absorb, and the marriage could not accommodate, the surplus of a man's interior life, the overplus of energy and feeling and need that had no sanctioned outlet. She held it, carefully, for 30 years. She did not exploit it, did not publish it, did not turn it into a transaction of any kind. She simply held it. That is an act of considerable generosity, and it deserves to be recognized as such. Whatever else the relationship was, and the honest position remains that the full nature of it is not publicly knowable, it was sustained, on her side, by something that looks very much like love. Not necessarily romantic love in its conventional definition, but the broader love that is care without condition, presence without agenda, loyalty without benefit. Philip adored her in return. That much is clear from everything the palace permitted to be visible, and it is probably the truest and most important thing about the whole story. The monarchy survives, generation after generation, because it finds people who will serve it, people who will give their freedom, their name, their independence, their priority, and in some cases their wholeness, to the maintenance of an institution whose continuity is considered worth those costs. Philip gave all of those things. The Queen gave them differently but no less completely, and Penny gave something that neither of them could have given themselves, the space to be human within an institution that requires its central figures to be something more than human, or something other than human, or something that ordinary humanity is not quite permitted to be. She was the space. That is what the palace knew. That is what the Queen understood and permitted, and in her own way honored. That is what the 30 seats meant, and what the silence has always meant, and what and also Penny, meant every single time Philip said it. He needed her there, not as spectacle, not as scandal, not as the story the tabloids wanted to tell, as herself, as the woman who had come into his life through grief and stayed through everything that followed, who had seen him at his worst and his best, and had kept the whole of it private, who had sat with him in Norfolk in the last years of his life, when the world was very large and he was becoming very small, and who had simply been present. That is the story the palace knew, the full version of it, the version that required no official confirmation, because it was visible to anyone who paid close enough attention, who looked at where she was standing, and who stood beside her, and who had put her name on the list. She was there because she had been there all along. The palace knew that. The Queen knew it. And somewhere in the archives of a private life that will never be made public, Penny Knatchbull knows it too, knows what it was, what it meant, what it cost, and what it gave. She keeps all of it. That is the last and most complete thing this story can say about her.
Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you loved this story, check out the other videos on your screen now. I think you'll really enjoy them. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. See you in the next story.